Okay, this says we're live. Does everyone see us? Are we live? Are we good to go? We're going to make this show. Hot Rod's ready. People in the chat room are ready. I'm going to wait for my cue from everyone. Oh, Identity says we are ready, so let's go in 3, 2. This is TWIS. This Week in Science, episode number 755, recorded on January 22nd, 2020. Directing space traffic. Hey everyone, I'm Dr. Kiki, and tonight on This Week in Science, we are going to fill your head with rattlesnakes, virus snakes, and space debris. But first, Justin, you're muted.
We can't hear you.
You muted yourself. You can unmute yourself.
Wow.
Now we can't hear you again.
You're muted again. There you go.
No, it's good. It's fine.
You're good. You're good.
What were you even saying? Oh, yeah. Disclaimer. This is not the world you signed up for. When you were born into this world, your biology was prepared for a very different place. Millions of years of evolution, 100,000 years of language, thousands of years of civilization, and now you're part of an artificial environment the world has never seen before. But no worries. You happen to have been born as one of the most adaptable species the planet has ever seen. Your kind has rolled with the changes before and changed in ways that made it easier to survive. And while your new environment may pose challenges, your biology will follow. Thanks to advances in technology, you might not need to rely on such a large brain, so it may shrink a bit. Your keen physical prowess can relax into a more sedentary society. No one will ask you to join a mastodon hunt anytime soon. Do not be concerned if there are some hiccups of disease along the way. It's temporary trade-offs. Change that takes place over time will be slow. Besides, what's a little diabetes if you no longer need to run from a pack of lions or chase off a family of bears to get the good cave for the night? Just never forget that the skills that allowed your ancestors to overcome the toughest challenges are still with you. That smartphone in your hand, just the latest version of a tool mankind has wielded to circumvent the world for millions of years. No longer stone, but still crafted to fit nicely in the palm. The modern world is not the one your biology was built for, but we're working on that. Here on This Week in Science, coming up next.
Oh dear. Tonight. I want to learn everything. Gracious. Everything's. I'm going to start that over, everybody.
We'll fix it in post. Wait, who's post?
Isn't this what I do? This is our
That's right.
Hey, fix it in post moment. Let's start over again. Okay. Coming up next.
I've got the kind of mind I can't get enough. I want to learn everything. I want to fill it all up with new discoveries that happen every day of the week. There's only one place to go to find the knowledge I seek. I want to know what's happening. What's happening? What's happening this week in science? What's happening? What's happening? What's happening this week in science?
Good science to you, Kiki and Blair.
And a good science to you too, Justin, Blair, and everyone out there. Welcome to another episode of This Week in Science. We are back on the internet. Last week was a lot of fun. If you missed our live broadcast from the California Academy of Sciences Nightlife SF Sketchfest event, that was a good time. And I do hope I've been trying to get the audio from the Sketchfest people so that I can get that episode out to you, podcast listeners. Who knows? 755 may come out to the podcast public before 754 this year.
I mean, they're busy. They probably have about 50 more comedy shows before the end of the fest. So
it's been busy.
We got some stuff going on.
It was a great show, though. And we have another wonderful show lined up for you tonight. Tonight, I have stories about cancer and possibilities for treating it. I've also got a story or two about some psychoactives and gray hair. And we are joined tonight by an astrodynamicist who I will introduce in just a few moments. He's going to talk with us about space debris. Justin, what?
I have got a Mars Fest Destiny, Oceans on Mars story, and when snakes fly, or
Snakes on a plane.
when snakes grow wings. It's the coronavirus story.
Oh, no. I don't know what that has to do with snakes, but we will find out in just a little bit. And Blair, what is in the animal corner?
Oh, I have some wet rattlesnakes. I have some cooperative parrots, and I have some playful wolves.
Oh, it's all very adjective and animal.
You know, I like to theme it up.
descriptive. I know, it's very themed. As we jump into the show, the theme, I don't know what our theme is tonight in general, but it's
Science.
It's science. That's right. As always. if
Cop
you
out,
are not-
perhaps.
If you are not yet subscribed, you can do so by looking for This Week in Science on any podcast directory that you may use. You can find us on Spotify, on Spreaker, Pandora, on radio.com, all over the place. And you can find us on YouTube, Facebook. Like I said, This Week in Science. Our website is twis.org. But now it's time for our interview. I'd love to introduce our guest tonight, Dr. Moriba Jah. He's an American space scientist and an aerospace engineer. He's interested in where things are in space, and he's an associate professor of aerospace engineering and engineering mechanics at the University of Texas in Austin, and previously worked as a spacecraft navigator for NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory. Welcome to the show, Dr. Jah.
Booyah. Thank you for having me.
You are welcome. I'm so excited to talk with you tonight about a growing problem. I just have to know, are we going down the road to the movie WALL-E, the future where our skies are filled with space junk?
Well, so here's the thing. The answer is yes, not immediately, but we're certainly kind of on that path because we keep on putting stuff up there, and most of that stuff kind of stays up pretty much forever. And we have no space traffic rules, so that's an issue. Yeah.
Getting into what you do and what you look at and how you start figuring out where things are in space. You work as an astrodynamicist. What exactly is that?
Yeah, so the field of astrodynamics, basically it's the science that studies motion of things in space. So if there's something in space and it's moving, astrodynamics is all about, well, why is it moving that way? How will it move in the future? That sort of thing.
How did you get interested in that?
Very good question. Right out of high school, I enlisted in the U.S. Air Force, and I was a security policeman. My job was to guard nuclear missiles in Montana.
Wow.
I didn't even know where Montana was until they told me, hey, you got to go to Montana to guard nukes, and I had to look it up on a map. And interestingly enough, I spent all my 4 years of enlistment in Montana. They call it big sky country. I call it nothing but sky country. And during those late nights when I would safeguard America from random cows and stuff like that, I'd look at the skies, and the skies were like really beautiful. I'd never seen so many stars in my life. And interestingly enough, every once in a while, I'd see these dots of light kind of streak across the sky. And I wonder, what are these dots? It's like, okay, I don't see flashing lights, so clearly not a plane. Definitely not a shooting star, a meteor. And then I did a little bit of research, come to find out, lo and behold, something that humans put into space. And that, I was mesmerized. I was like, wow, people put stuff up there and I can see this stuff streaking across the sky. And I think that really solidified my curiosity to know more about these things orbiting the Earth. And so that led me to study aerospace engineering.
That's great. And you've moved away from the satellites, though. I mean, we've got the satellites that we know what they're doing up there. How did you make the transition from looking at the things that we put up there to stay up there, to monitor, to take pictures, to, that we work with on a constant basis, allow us to communicate, to the stuff that's like screws and pieces of tin?
Yeah, absolutely. So the thing is, so we still look at working stuff, but at the same time, once I left my job with NASA's Jet Propulsion Lab, no longer doing Mars stuff, looking at Earth, the Department of Defense has the largest public kind of database or catalog of human-made objects orbiting the Earth, and it turns out that they track about 26,000 things, ranging in size from like a cell phone all the way to the space station. And out of those 26,000 things, about 3,000 of those work and everything else is garbage. So you got to be able to separate the stuff that works from the stuff that doesn't work. And I guess to be a little coy, debris or not debris, that is the question.
Oh, that was
and the
funny. I
reason
like
for
it.
tracking this, the reason for tracking these, even these small objects that aren't doing anything, is they're a threat to all the stuff that is doing stuff, right?
Right. So yeah. So basically, it's like there are these kind of orbital highways where we put stuff, and it's almost like the working stuff are working cars. And imagine that you run out of gas and you just get in another car, but the car doesn't stop; it keeps on going. And imagine you're driving on a freeway,
and it's going quick.
Yeah,
it's moving fast.
Exactly. So imagine you're going on a freeway and you got a bunch of other stuff kind of moving along with you. Some of it is crisscrossing, your path, that sort of stuff. And there's no red lights or green lights, right? Everything's just kind of going. Yeah.
But you mentioned, this is one of the limitations. It's 26,000 objects that are the size of like a cell phone and larger. What about the stuff that's smaller? How are we keeping track of that stuff?
Yeah, so the reality is we're not. And we know that this stuff is up there. We've done tests to kind of quantify that a little bit. Some people have these facilities where they do hypervelocity impacts. That basically means take something really small and have it go towards a simulated satellite or whatever at really high speeds and just see how many pieces are created. And it's like, tens of thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands of pieces created in those hypervelocity impacts. So we know that these things are creating really, really small pieces, and they're also moving very quickly. And the other thing too is that, we have evidence from when we used to have a space shuttle. Every time the space shuttle would come down, it would have all these kind of nicks into it because of this environment. So we know this is coming, it's happening. And I also have a good friend of mine who's a former astronaut, Susan Helms, and she told me every once in a while in the space station, they'd go into this module that was the kind of the forward-facing module in terms of like the direction of motion, and she'd be in there and she'd hear ding, 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 ding. She'd hear things like stuff like hitting the hull kind of thing, and that was freaky. So we know that there's definitely small particles of stuff that we can't track that is interacting with these larger objects.
And it's interacting. How fast are things moving up there?
Yeah, man. So this is where I have some bad news. Relatively speaking, stuff is going in kind of like in the same direction, but every once in a while, you have these orbital highways that crisscross each other. Some of them might almost be head on. And when that happens, you're talking relative speeds of like 15 kilometers per second. And, a bullet moves at about 1 kilometer per second. So you're talking like 15.
Wow. Whoa.
Yeah. 15 times, speed of a bullet kind of thing.
And
So
I was thinking about
loose screw that Kiki was referring to earlier becomes a projectile that could take out a satellite or a space station or a vessel trying to get out.
And even if you're in a heavily armored station or ship, if you're ever outside just in a spacesuit,
It's a
That's
bad day.
Wow.
yeah.
Wow. I didn't even think of that.
Yeah, it's a bad day for sure.
With the growth of the private space industry, we've got companies, Blue Origin, SpaceX, all more smaller companies that are launching, getting into low Earth orbit, doing planning rendezvous with the International Space Station, putting up satellites. SpaceX has all of their communication satellites that are a big conversation piece these days in the astronomical community.
Yeah.
Like, how is that being monitored in addition to the governmental launches and materials that are being put into orbit?
Yeah, so the truth of it is that it's not holistically monitored. So the Department of Defense has its own eyes looking at stuff. The Russians have their own eyes looking at stuff. Other countries have their own eyes, but the actual observations are not shared in some common pool, right? So everybody has their own opinions, and the opinions don't necessarily line up with each other. The other thing too is that because we don't kind of have these traffic rules in space, I believe that we're operating kind of out in front of the headlights. So the reality is outpacing a regulatory and governance framework that can really look at long-term sustainability of that environment. And you don't have inclusivity in terms of voices that get to weigh in on some of these decisions, and I think that's another problem.
Yeah, it was some years back. I seem to recall the Chinese decided to detonate a satellite, which created a pretty large debris field.
Yeah.
It would outrage a lot of folks, but I mean there's nobody owns space, and so there's no central body that's, I guess, making the rules for doing that sort of thing or not.
Right. So we have this thing called the Outer Space Treaty, and it basically says that space is common heritage of humankind and all this stuff.
Yeah.
There's no court of law to bring some dispute per se. Maybe you could go to the Hague in the Netherlands and that sort of stuff if you had an issue. But yeah, it's like, China blew up one of their satellites in a pretty high orbit, creating thousands of objects in one event at a pretty high altitude, things that won't re-enter for, our lifetimes and our children's children kind of thing.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Pretty much for a very, very, very long time. And that happened in 2007. But then India blew up one of their own satellites, basically last calendar year. And they said, in 45 days, all the pieces of debris will fully re-enter. And the U.S. is still tracking pieces of debris from that are now above the altitude of the space station. And I mean, could be a hazard to the space station. So yeah.
When we're thinking about the re-entry, I mean, if you've got a large object, over the last few years, there was the Chinese space station that we were watching re-enter, and large things will re-enter and burn up in the atmosphere. What are the dynamics involved? What are the forces involved in smaller objects? Do some smaller objects just get stuck up there forever?
Yeah, so I would say, really anything that is around, let's say anything that's below 700 kilometers altitude eventually is going to re-enter. And maybe you have like half a dozen or so objects that re-enter every day. They pretty much burn up in the atmosphere. A lot of them do. The ones that do survive re-entry, because our planet is 3/4 water, chances are they're landing in the ocean someplace. More stuff in the ocean, right? But yeah, every once in a while they do land on land, and sometimes in areas close to people, and that's not so good. So the re-entry thing is going to be a problem with more and more objects going up there, especially thinking about space tourism and having like hotels up there and that sort of stuff. I mean, eventually the International Space Station is going to have to come down. Everything that goes up comes down, kind of thing, and that's going to have to be planned quite well, because you're going to want that to re-enter very steeply to try to burn up as much of that stuff in the atmosphere as possible. So
that's, you were talking about the seeing the dots, the satellites as they cross the skies of Montana. I had the chance to go out and actually see the space station, and if you look up and where it's going to be and get to a night sky and look at it, it's like looking at a 2-story house far off in the distance. Like it's amazing how big you can see it from the ground.
Yeah, and it's that sort of thing that was like, again, mesmerizing to me. I'm like, wow, I definitely want to get involved in that. Like, that looks really cool. Yeah.
How far out does something have to be to become to enter a permanent orbit around the Earth?
I would say anything above like 1,200 kilometer altitude kind of thing is going to be up there longer than, history books are going to be around, sort of thing. So,
okay.
Do we have anything that's out that far currently?
Actually, let me take that back. Most of the stuff is below that. But there is a significant amount of objects that is above that, especially like the communications satellites and that sort of stuff. So we have this, we have this orbital highway that's called GEO, or geostationary, or geosynchronous, and that's like 36,000 kilometers up there. And unfortunately, when things come at end of life, disposal kind of operations for things out of GEO, they don't bring that stuff back because takes a lot of fuel, a lot of energy. It's very expensive. So they've devised this thing called a graveyard orbit, and basically it's like an off ramp from the highway in this road that's just beyond GEO. And it turns out that there's this trash bin around that, and unfortunately, zombies are coming back, meaning things don't stay there forever because of different forces due to gravity of the sun, moon, and stuff like that. These objects, we see evidence that they're coming back and intersecting the regular GEO belt, and so that's an issue.
That is a big issue. What other things like that have you found really surprising and that are going to pose big challenges for scientists and engineers moving forward?
So let me ask you this question. I would love to try to share my screen with you. You want to try that out?
That would be fantastic.
Okay, so here we go. And hopefully you can still hear me and stuff like that. And I'm going to do this really quick. Let me go to this Chrome. Hold on, let's see. Yep. Yeah, here we go. I'm just gonna go like this, and
oh, wonderful. Okay.
Can you see that?
Yes, I've put it up on the screen.
So this.
Wow.
So basically, all of this stuff. This is the combined kind of location of all the trackable stuff currently orbiting the Earth.
That garbage is beautiful.
Yeah.
It is, but there's too much. There's way too much of it.
Yeah.
So for the audio audience, I just want to describe what we're looking at. There's it's a black screen, and the Earth is at the center, and it looks as though it's surrounded by a dust cloud that has a few or even some rings in the way that you would start thinking about rings around Saturn or the other gas giants. And they're very distributed, and the rings are obviously much more concentrated. But it's an impressive. It looks like a swarm of bees.
We've been way busier than I thought.
Yeah.
Yeah. So So the thing to say here is that the outer ring is GEO. So that's that geostationary ring that's about 36,000 kilometers above the surface. And all the dots that are in kind of orange, which are few, are the things that work, and everything else is garbage. So the pink stuff,
Wow.
yeah. And so this is kind of what, let me just show you what, if I just turn everything off except for things close to geo, this is what I'm talking about. This is this highway, and the interesting thing is that you can see kind of this belt is tilted.
Yes.
All the stuff that is tilted are things that are no longer active, and so they're left to the mercy of the external forces and stuff. And so because of gravity of the sun and the moon, that's why they're tilted that way, because, you know, the Earth's axis is tilted, blah, blah, blah. But the orange stuff is kind of along Earth's equatorial plane, and this is where, you know, DirecTV and all those things are located. And as you can see, there's a bunch of stuff kind of interacting with that highway.
There is. It's crossing it.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so I got to tell you, once the highway becomes too cluttered or unusable, then, you know, we could lose these kind of communication services, which would be pretty detrimental to our way of life.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
Do we have a way to get rid of this stuff currently?
Yeah. So I have some bad news for you.
More bad news.
Yeah. Not so much.
Okay.
And, you know, the European Space Agency has a mission called Clear Space, which will launch in 2025, and will, you know, the mission is to go to kind of this upper stage rocket body kind of dead thing, big, called Vespa, and basically retrieve it to demonstrate the technology to do some of this cleaning. So, yeah, the European Space Agency is going to try to do that. One thing I wanted to point out here is you can see this ring in pink, right?
Mm-hmm.
This kind of ellipse. You see that?
Yeah, it looks like a
Yeah,
smaller
it's
hula
much
hoop.
closer.
It looks
Yeah.
like a smaller hula hoop going
Exactly.
around the Earth. Yeah.
So that this pink hula hoop, all of these dots came from a single object that blew up just several months ago.
Oh wow.
So that's
part of the,
it's shedding the ring of debris is
Yeah.
spreading
yeah.
around.
So whenever two things collide or whenever one thing explodes, it creates a bunch of stuff that spreads around like that. And so, yeah, that's part of the problem. Big things become many, you know, smaller things.
Do you think part of our problem as humans is that we just think of space as so vast? I mean, space is big. It's like, you know, once upon a time, America was this big place and we could settle it. And now we're like, there's people all over the place. We've done a great job
Except for in
crowding
Montana.
out. Yeah,
Right.
except for Montana.
Right.
Nobody wants
Yeah.
to go. That's
Yeah.
if they're talking about the sky, then yeah, there's nothing on the ground to be
It
there.
is a very interesting correlation, though. I'm noticing a lot of similarities between this and the Earth's oceans and how it just feels like this vast, endless sea. So, yeah, a little drop in the bucket of trash in there. Who cares? It's a vast ocean. It's just like that, right? Like space is huge. What's a little bit of trash?
Exactly. Yeah, no, so that is part of the issue. And look, the truth is it really is big, but at the same time, you know, things are coming close to each other, you know, and as long as we don't have rules on how to behave that we all agree to, nothing good can come of that eventually, you know, and we keep on launching stuff. I mean, SpaceX is planning on launching 60 things every couple of weeks. That's going to add a significant number of objects. And I guess the other thing I want to do is just be very clear that part of the solution to this is transparency and predictability. I mean, if everybody knows where everything's located and I can predict where something's going to be a week from now, 2 weeks from now, that helps a lot. You know, if you look at air traffic, you know, the amount of air traffic coming into, like, you know, LAX these days, there's no way that 60 years ago LAX could have handled that level of air traffic.
Yeah.
Why can they handle more? Well, they know more precisely where things are located. You know, we have this thing called GPS, so we know where the aircraft are to within several feet, that sort of stuff. So that helps. And so, you know, looking at space traffic, part of the thing isn't necessarily the number of objects, but it's the uncertainty that we have on where these things are located and our inability to really predict where those things are going to be accurately, you know, a couple days from now and that sort of thing. So that's part of the issue.
That
I'm
isn't there, wouldn't there
imagining-
be sweet spots for putting things in orbit for communication satellites and the rest of it, that if we've sort of used it with our early round technology and filled this up with junk in these sweet spots, 10 years, 20 years now, we've got this great new technology we want to put up in space. We don't have our sweet spot in orbits anymore. We have to put them, so we have to have some other kind of like spot to place them that they might not be as efficient, right?
So here's what I want to tell you, Justin. Man, you couldn't have said it, you know, better. That's exactly right. There, you know, we do have these sweet spots, just like that geostationary ring that I showed you. That's a place that Mother Nature gives us to put these things, because at that distance, it takes a satellite about 24 hours to go around its orbit once. As common sense tells us, that's like, you know, 1 Earth day, which means that if you have a dish and you want to point it at something, that something is going to be relatively in the same part of the sky, right? But yeah, if that natural highway becomes unusable, then you have to spend a lot of fuel to kind of be in that same general location in space, and that's going to be economically unfeasible.
When we're thinking about all the stuff that's up there, how, someone in the chat room is wondering this as well, how do you track it all? I mean, how do you do that?
Right. So basically we have radars and telescopes.
Okay.
You know, the largest database of free stuff, you know, freely known stuff in space comes from the Department of Defense. Hopefully that gets migrated to something like the Department of Commerce. You know, the White House kind of signed something to that effect on June 18th of 2018, but you know, Congress hasn't really appropriated funds to do that. But hopefully, you know, it goes to Department of Commerce. And radars and telescopes are what we use commercially. Some people have some radars, like Leo Labs. They're like the only commercial company that has these radars, you know, in Texas, in Alaska, and in New Zealand to track a lot of this stuff. And then you have a few companies that have telescopes that are also looking towards the skies to track some of this stuff as well, and see if there's a marketplace for, you know, commercial companies to provide these sensor data. But I want to so I'm gonna show you how varied some of these opinions are. Okay, I'm gonna do this share screen thing again, because this is gonna be, okay, you're gonna be like, wow, this isn't so good. All right. So let's see. So you can see this?
Yes.
All right. Let's look at, here we go. So what you're seeing is one object that belongs to a company called Planet Labs. It's a low Earth orbit satellite. There's its orbit. And we have 4 different opinions on where it's located. Okay. Right now you can't see the difference because we're kind of far away. But basically, I'm gonna zoom in here.
Is this Google Earth? Like,
no, this is something
satellites?
that I put together with it's something I put together with my grad students, but it's all open source software. The visualization is called Cesium. Analytical Graphics has that as open source, but all the math and stuff is, you know, from my team at UT Austin.
It's wonderful.
Yeah. So interestingly enough, so here we go. I'm going to pause this really quick. And basically that's one satellite, but 4 different opinions on where it's located.
Got it.
Number 1 is where the public opinion of the Department of Defense says it's located. Okay. Number 2 is where the owner says it's located. Number 3 is where Leo Labs believes it's located. And number 3 is right below number 4. Number 4 is where I say it's located by processing some of Leo Labs radar data. So the difference in distance between 2, 3, and 4 is probably like a football field, and many football fields to the other one.
To where the Department of Defense is saying it is.
So this makes predictions. Even when you've got something that is getting close, something that might be a problem hitting something else,
right?
You're still having to have this range of this window of guesstimation of where the objects are even in the first place. Oh, jeez.
Yeah. So that's what I'm saying, is that we don't even agree on where stuff is. You know what I'm saying?
And that's not, is this taking into account stuff like the Department of Defense not necessarily wanting to be transparent about where things are because they want things to be a little bit obscured?
So I guess in that sense, one of the things that I'm trying to do, with my own kind of research is, So one of the things that I'm trying to do with my own research, right, is to kind of create a Waze for space. Just like Waze is a participatory sensing network, I want amateur astronomers and everybody with data to eventually contribute to this thing so that nothing hides. Nothing can hide. And so if somebody wants to be purposefully deceitful, it'll be evident that that's what's happening. So I want to hold people accountable for their behaviors in space.
I think that's wonderful. And we now have enough, we have enough people who are amateur astronomers with really nice telescopes that is it possible to get full coverage of the sky and really do this?
There's a lot of space to look at,
I know.
So I guess
in some senses, space is big. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm curious about kind of the devil's advocate side of that. Like perhaps the reason the Department of Defense, for example, doesn't want you to know exactly where the satellite is because another country could destroy our satellites and knock us off all GPS, right? So like, is there a concern about that until there's kind of this coalition about the rules for this space, that there's still a question about what is and is not kosher to do in that space?
So I'm glad that you brought that up, because I want to show you something, Blair. You ready?
Please do.
Yeah. So here we go. Because I think you're gonna dig this. Okay. So here we go with the astrograph thing again. And the thing that I'm gonna show you now is, so you see all these pink dots?
Mm-hmm.
So again, we're looking at the Earth surrounded by pink dots.
Yep.
So
some of them are way out there.
Yeah.
So the interesting thing about all of these is that this comes from a community called CSAT-L, and these are a group of amateur astronomers. Their whole purpose is to keep track of spy satellites.
Wow.
So here's my disclaimer.
There is a subreddit for everything. Yes.
Yeah. So my disclaimer to you is that I will neither confirm nor deny the identity of any of these things. I'm just aggregating information and reporting people's opinions. So this is their opinion, right? But the point is this: the emperor has no clothes.
Mm-hmm.
If it's something that is reflecting sunlight and people have a backyard telescope and can see it, then that's the way it is.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. There's no hiding. Yeah.
Unless they decide to use Vanta Black on the
right
on the surface of their.
But it does. It reminds me that there was the government spent 10 years, however many $1 billion, creating an encryption chip, and the Clipper chip, I think it was, and a kid from Berkeley cracked it as his thesis in his computer science class. Like, they're not going to keep up. There's too many clever people with too much technology in their hands to keep this thing all these things off the map.
Exactly.
What I'm taking away from all this is that yes, there is a lot of trash out there, but also I knew there were a lot of satellites, but I didn't really understand that it looked like an LA freeway at rush hour out there, right? Like
It's crazy.
I expected there to be a lot more space.
Yeah. So here's the thing, right? I mean, the dots are a lot larger than the size of the object. So full disclaimer that it's not to scale, but it at least shows you kind of how these things are distributed, right? Like their locations and that sort of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, it's way more than I thought.
Yeah.
And so the challenges for you as an astrodynamicist when looking at these objects, what in figuring out or making predictions on where they're going to go, what factors do you need to know about these things to be able to make accurate predictions?
Right. So this is the part of the job that I love. One of the ones that I love the most is that there's gravity and then there's everything else. And so I call gravity an equal opportunity accelerator. Basically, tell me where you're located and I'll tell you what your acceleration due to gravity is. Like gravity doesn't care about your size, your shape, your creed, none of those things. It's basically where you're located and that's it. But all of these objects experience non-gravitational forces, and all the non-gravitational stuff depends on size, shape, what material it's made out of, how it's oriented, how it's spinning, all these things. And most of those physical characteristics, that's the stuff that we don't know. And so it's my job, if I want to really predict accurately where something's going to be in the future, I need to understand these physical characteristics. And so part of my job is kind of like Sherlock Holmes. From these dots of light from radars and telescopes, I have to then figure out all these physical characteristics, and that's kind of the challenge.
Yeah. And so your hopes moving forward for this field of work, I mean, you've mentioned you want space to be open sourced and for there to be no secrets, but what else do you hope for this field? So,
I really believe in transdisciplinarity, and by that I mean solving this problem isn't just astrodynamicists, it's social scientists, it's anthropologists, it's lawyers, it's everybody. I want to have discussions that are more inclusive. One of the things I'm looking at for sustainability is looking at the knowledge that indigenous people on the earth have, this thing called traditional ecological knowledge, and saying, hey, listen, there's some people, groups of people on the planet that have thrived for thousands of years because they know what balance with the ecosystem is, like the Inuit, like the Aborigines, like the Maori. What are the tenets or what are the principles of this traditional ecological knowledge? Gather evidence, understand all the relationships between things in the ecosystem. This concept of ownership isn't about rights, it's about custodianship and stewardship and mutual respect, right? These are the things that I think we can look to the voices of indigenous people and say, listen, they figured this out over thousands of years. Maybe there's something useful that we can apply in how we behave, establishing norms of behavior in space that would let us utilize this resource, finite resource, for thousands of more years, right? Because more of our technology is dependent on these space-based capabilities, and none of these satellites are protected from harm or degradation or loss or any of that stuff.
Yeah, if we can get people, if we can get people acting like Earthlings. Go ahead, Justin.
I think I'm breaking up. It was recently posited to me.
Yep.
Sort of in a way, who has greater knowledge of biology? Professor of biology who's visiting a place they've never been before, or somebody whose family or people or group has lived there for 200 years. And it's an interesting question. And it's kind of both. One has maybe a more generalized idea, but wouldn't be able to survive within that ecology, within the local biology that these people have been surviving in for hundreds of years. And there are absolutely lessons of sustainability that you can bring to, wow. And I'd never considered it in terms of our curation of space, our caretaking of that dynamic. But yeah, absolutely applies there as well.
Yep, you bet.
I guess I have one more question. In a perfect world, should we be pushing this trash out further into space out of orbit? Should we be bringing it back down to Earth, or should we be trying to destroy it more effectively in orbit?
Yeah, so the destroying, so here's the thing. We don't want to create more pieces.
Right.
Repurposing.
Yeah. So no. So that's good, because there are already businesses already targeting this idea of recycling stuff. So recycling is good. So let's say, yeah, recycling is an idea. If you can bring it back and spend an extra fuel to do that, that is a good idea. The pushing stuff out, I really dislike that, right?
Yeah.
Because basically it's like, okay, that's still thinking the space is big and it's somebody else's problem kind of stuff. You know, it's the idea of putting Teslas up there and that sort of thing.
Right. Yeah.
I don't like that so much. So I'm definitely about recycling or bringing back. You know, I think those are definitely my favorite ideas when it comes to that kind of, you know, space sustainability. And you know, one of the things that I feel fortunate for, you know, that there's the World Economic Forum going on in Davos right now.
Mm-hmm.
The World Economic Forum started this project called the Space Sustainability Rating, or SSR, and 2 teams got awarded, you know, the ability to work on this project: the European Space Agency and MIT. And I'm actually partnered with MIT, working with Europe on this space sustainability rating. And the thing is, we're going to try to develop a rating that's kind of like restaurants, hotels, that sort of stuff, where we incentivize people to take actions that lead towards long-term sustainability, and try to basically entice companies to want to have a high space sustainability rating and show their customers and show their stakeholders and all that other stuff, hey, you know, we're doing the right thing. And I have to tell you, by speaking to a lot of people, I can tell you that 9 out of 10 times, if you give people the option to just do something just for money's sake that might be to the detriment of others, or do something in a way that does no harm and that sort of stuff, 9 out of 10 times people want to choose to do the right thing as long as they can still make money from it, right? Mm-hmm. So I think we can do both. Yeah.
The other thing that I always think about.
Can I add one thing to Blair?
Hold on.
Blair's list.
Yeah.
What about, this is a totally layman question, but what about like a giant magnet that we drag around and try to collect stuff with? I mean, if we could turn those little pieces into one bigger piece, is that progress?
So here's my answer to you, Justin. I think in some part you're definitely a genius, man. You're picking up what I'm putting down. So there is a company, a Japanese company called Astroscale, and they're going to demonstrate, I think next year, the ability to have some sort of magnet that attracts some of this stuff. So I have to say, most of the stuff up there is not magnetically, is not magnetic, but some of the stuff is. And this company, Astroscale, is going to demonstrate, at least for the stuff that is magnetic, that they can do something about that.
It's a start.
Yeah.
Blair,
I get worried. Yeah. Looking at all this stuff out there, the other thing that I get kind of freaked out thinking about is that all of this started as mass on our planet. And if too much of it is no longer on our planet, at what point does that start impact our orbit itself, the total mass? We're releasing some of our finite matter out into space, and that also, I know it would take a very long time, but I still feel like it's something that needs to be thought about before we let too much of it go.
So let me say this, Blair. I think you can sleep well, knowing that that won't be a problem in the proximate future.
Right.
But here's what I am saying. We're definitely creating like rings like Saturn around the planet. Like that's kind of freaky. That some other intelligent life that might come to visit, all of a sudden we become kind of like another Saturn in the solar system with all this junk, you know. That's pretty embarrassing.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were gonna visit. We were gonna stop by, but
That's right.
Yeah.
There's all this
Too much
trash
pollution.
in your front yard.
Your front yard was a mess.
Right.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and I imagine, you know, as long as all that stuff doesn't get pushed out too far, we've still, you know, we're holding our center of gravity.
Oh, and
more or
we
less.
pick up more. We pick up more debris from space anyway. Than
Right, right.
Exactly.
We're gaining weight, Blair. We're gaining weight.
I'll tell you the thing that worries me more are these people that want to bring asteroids back to the Earth, right?
Yeah,
they want
no.
to go and grab
Mm-mm.
whole asteroids and bring them into Earth's orbit. I think that's a bad idea.
We don't
Safe
need to
to
go
say.
doing that.
Yeah, we don't need to do that.
But if we put one in the right spot and it clears the rest of the orbit, and it's just then one big thing covered in space debris, that's an improvement.
So here's what I'm hearing you say, Justin, that we could have like a gigantic like Nerf ball kind of thing that could just like pick up. But here's the bad thing, man. It won't discriminate the bad stuff from the working stuff. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Oh, right.
So we have to have a
Yeah.
Oops.
Well, listen, Justin, if you can invent a discriminating Nerf ball,
Mhm.
I think you have a moneymaker right there, my friend.
Because you put the thing in there maybe slower than the rest of the debris, and it eventually collects everything else. But then you've got to get it back out of the way again, so you can. And in the meantime, we're already using this space. Yeah.
What you need is a space Roomba. That's what you need.
So I have to say, Blair, you're not the first one to bring that up. Yeah.
Great
It
mind.
needs to be a smart space Roomba.
I think I saw something like
Exactly.
that in Spaceballs. Didn't they have a giant vacuum cleaner?
They did.
They sure did.
Yes. Oh, Spaceballs. Is there anything else that you want to tell us about things that you're working on, or on things that you hope people spend time learning more about?
You know, I would say this: like the websites that we have, they're up and running. They're publicly accessible. There is a problem with space traffic. People need to be more aware of how much stuff we're putting up there, and that we don't have the right regulations in place to really guarantee kind of, you know, sustainable behavior. We want space to be transparent and predictable. We want to be able to hold people accountable, and we want inclusive, thoughts in how we move forward. Right? You know, this whole idea with the astronomers being ticked off at SpaceX. Yeah. If there would have been a conversation that was more inclusive, maybe we could have avoided at least some of this. And so I think people are just too rapid to just kind of think about, you know, their own interests, and we're just not open enough to really discuss all this stuff. The other thing too is, in April at TED, I was able to meet with folks. You know, Al Gore was one of them, and the climate change people, by and large, are like, oh, space debris, it's not climate change. You know, it's not,
Yeah.
you know. And the thing that I tell all the climate change people is, where do you think you're getting a lot of your data for climate change?
Exactly. Yeah.
All the satellites. It's
Yeah.
essential.
Right? It's
Yeah.
part of the thing that delivers your climate change data. So space is important.
Mhm.
Space in general may be infinite, but near Earth space is finite. As a finite resource, it's in need of environmental protection. And that's the main message that I want to give to people is, listen, let's look at things like indigenous knowledge and try to apply this stuff for space sustainability.
Yeah. I love the idea that we need to really not just look at our planet and the surface of our planet as custodians, but we also need to shift it to looking outward, and maybe it'll, you know, as we take the big steps off of our planet and through our solar system, you know, maybe that's a perspective that we can take with us.
Because
Exactly.
if we don't learn that lesson, we may get to a point where we can't get off of this rock.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be quite sad.
I mean, this is the picture of the Star Trek picture of the spaceships being built in space. You're sending up components, you build the big space. You can't if there's, was it 15 kilometers a second screws zipping through the hull of the thing?
Yeah, you don't
bullets.
Yeah, exactly. You don't want to be working up there with a bunch of random bullets flying by.
No.
The spaceship building in space took on a new dangerous aspect.
That's right.
Oh, Dr. Jah, thank you so much for joining us today. Where can people find more information about you and space debris?
Yeah, so I think, look, if people just Google, Moriba Jah, UT Austin, they'll find all the YouTube videos, the TED Talks, the websites with like the data that they can see. So I just encourage people to do a little bit of that Googling, and I'm very easy to reach, and people email me if they have any questions. I'm happy to spend time chatting with people about this stuff, and yeah.
Fantastic. And I have appreciated your Twitter account so you have a
Booyah. Thank you. Yeah.
It's a good place to have a conversation as well.
There you go.
Yeah, thank you once again for joining us. I really appreciate it. We will have some of these links on our website as well to make it easier for people who don't want to do that Googling. But it's time for us to take a break. Time for us to move into the second half of our show. We've got some science news for you coming up. Justin's got virus snakes. Blair's got rattlesnakes. I have cancer.
Snakes.
Yay.
I'm
Snake.
so
No, I
sorry to
don't.
hear that.
No, I don't. No. All right. Moving on up. Thank you for listening to the first half of the show. We will be back in just one moment with more This Week in Science.
We can't explain things you've heard with more than intuition. A line breeze that shows the way to go. New conclusion. The methods of hypothesis and patience are the only things I need. Put on a pair of goggles and go looking for the things I couldn't see.
Thank you for listening to TWIS, or if you're watching, thanks for watching us on YouTube or Facebook. That's right. We are live streaming to YouTube, to Facebook, also to our website, twis.org. You can watch us live every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Pacific time. But our podcast is around, so if you haven't subscribed yet, consider subscribing to This Week in Science. That's right. Go to your podcast carrier. If you like Spotify, we're on Spotify. If you like Pandora, we're on Pandora. We also are on radio.com, Spreaker, TuneIn, Apple, Google, all over the place. This Week in Science. And tell a friend, because the more people we have in our TWIS Minion family, the more science fun that we can all have. Science isn't something we should keep to ourselves. It's something that we should share and discuss vigorous discussions. We like questions, and we like to talk about those questions. That's what this show is all about. Curiosity and questions. And if any of you are interested in supporting This Week in Science and helping to maintain what we do in bringing you science every week, we'd appreciate you heading to our Patreon page. That's patreon.com/thisweekinscience. There's also a link at our website, twis.org, but patreon.com/thisweekinscience, where you can sign up to be a patron of This Week in Science. We also have PayPal options available on our website if Patreon is not for you. Thank you for being here, for being a part of TWIS, for listening, for sharing your time with us. This Week in Science, it is an endeavor of love, and it's also here because of you. We could not do this without you. Thank you for your support.
We can't explain things you've heard with more than intuition. A line breeze that shows the way to go.
And we're back. You're listening to This Week in Science.
That's right. We are back. Now, we have not been getting a lot of letters answering the "What has science done for you lately" question. So I have, for the time being, removed it from our show rundown. But I would like to have a part of the show where we talk with you, where you can send us letters, where you can ask us questions, where you can tell us things that you've learned. So if you would like to have us read a question, a comment, just a little note, a song, a poem, whatever it happens to be, within reason, within reasonable parameters of time and thought and social propriety. Anyway, I would love to read that on the show. We'd love to talk with you on the show. We'd love to bring you into the show. So please send me an email, Kirsten@thisweekinscience.com. That's KIRSTEN. Or leave us a message on our Facebook page.
May I also say that I think we started this just about 4 years ago. And I think we started it because there was stuff going on in the United States where science was not getting exactly the everyday recognition and support that it needed by our government here. And so this is a lovely time to make sure that this conversation continues, because we're about to make another big decision in our country that will have implications for that. Funding for science, funding for looking into our own orbit, checking in on our satellites, checking in on our climate, all this kind of stuff. So I think it's definitely still timely. It's definitely still important for us to take a moment, recognize what science is doing for us, big or small, in our lives, and making sure that we are showing that support every way that we can.
Absolutely. I remember years back, and I can say years back because TWIS is in our 20th year now, you know. We started talking about politics, science policy. We started talking about politics on This Week in Science, and I got lots of letters that said, "Hey, don't mix my chocolate and my peanut butter." And I was like, what? You know, science and politics mix, because science really is a part of politics, the body politic. It's a part of the work of knowledge, the work of people, and the workings of our society. So science does go hand in hand with politics. You know, we can have enthusiasm about robots and spiders and space, and we can have incredible enthusiasm about findings that are interesting, but we can also think about things in a very down-to-earth, fundamental way of how they can help influence our daily lives. So I think you're right on there, Blair. Yes. But let's talk about some of that science right now, shall we?
What do we have?
I have a story about cancer. This
Hoping
week,
it's good news.
yes, it is good news. This is a good one. So this week, the BBC reported a story about that I believe was entitled something to the effect of, let me see if I can actually get to the article here. Immune discovery may treat all cancer.
Oh, this sounds like very good news.
This headline has gotten people so excited, and I've seen it shared, this story shared on social media a number of times. And I want to say may treat is I don't I hate to rain on people's excitedness and thrill of oh, this is a cool discovery. It is a cool discovery, but there are still many, many, many questions. This is fundamental cell biology research. They are not yet at any stage of understanding of this system that would allow for human treatments of any kind. So to move on from that, let's talk about what was discovered and why it is exciting. We are at a stage of treating cancer where it's very blunt in our treatment. We don't have specific treatments for many cancers. There's been a treatment that we've talked about previously on the show, CAR T, in which T cells, which are cells of the immune system are taken out of the body and reprogrammed essentially to attack cancers, the lymphoma cancer. And it's showed a lot of success there. It does have some problems with immune system cascades.
Small percentage of the patients die from the treatment.
Yes, and they think it's due to this cytokine cascade. And so they're looking into why, but it's a very successful treatment so far. But so we've got these immune cells, T cells, killer T cells in our body, and a lot of times they want to kill invaders. This is what they're there. They're in the body. They're around to protect the body from invasion. And cancerous cells are these invaders that, programming has gone awry in a healthy cell, and a cell then starts dividing uncontrollably, leading to an invasion of an organ, or potentially eventually with metastasis of various organs throughout the body. We haven't found anything previously to kill these cancers. And so these researchers, they were looking for immune cells that might be activated by cancers and want to attack them. And so in a dish, they had these T cells and they grew them with cancerous cells. And they found these immune cells, one bunch of immune cells kept killing cancer cells. And they went, hey, that's new. That's interesting. What's going on?
This a while ago.
Yeah. And so they identified this cell and they call it MC7G5. Big fancy name.
Hey, somebody needed to do a little better naming job, but okay.
So we have MC7G5. So they have this lineage of T cell. They isolated it, and then they started growing it with cancer cells that had specific genes removed from them. So when a T cell identifies an invader or something that it wants to attack, what it does is it connects to something that's called, connects to a protein on the outside of the cell. And so these proteins stick out of the surface of cells, and the T cell comes by and it has like a puzzle piece kind of fit. It sniffs it. It says, that smells good, or that my key and lock fit together. I need to attack you now. It's an identifier, and that's how the immune cells know to attack things. They identify the antigen. So they kept cutting out the genes that produce known surface proteins on cancer cells. And if cancer cells survived, then what that would mean is that they're
identified the marker.
That they're identifying the marker. Exactly. They've cut out something that those killer T cells needed for identification. And so they found a protein. Woohoo! It's called MR1. And this MR1 helps the immune system recognize self from non-self. And it's pretty exciting. They don't know exactly how it gets to the surface or what holds it there, but there's a number of genes that end up leading to metabolites, and the metabolites bind the protein to the surface. And so there's this big combination of things that are involved that cell biologists are not certain of. But now we know that this cancer cell, this T cell, a specific kind of T cell, which was found in 2 healthy human beings, finds MR1 and recognizes cancer cells. So they tested. They're like, how specific is it? Let's grow this cancer cell with a whole bunch of different cells, with diseased cells that aren't cancerous, with normal healthy cells, with all sorts of cells that are dividing but not in a cancerous way, or that are going through various stages of cell division or cell development. And so they tested all these things, and they found that this cancer-killing T cell still only kills cancer. They haven't found a situation in their experiments in which it gets it wrong. And so they're thinking, wow, this is why this BBC article has the headline, "This may kill all cancers." They tested it with a bunch of different kinds of cancer cells. So heart, lung, kidney. They tested a bunch of different cancers. This killed them all in a dish. And so they looked further. They said, all right, what if we put these cancer killing cells into mice, which is our, research model. And they found that it seems to kill cancerous cells in mice. They took mice with no cancer, and then they gave them lymphoma. Lymphoma took over the bone marrow, and they injected these cancer-killing T cells into the mice as well. The cancer-killing T cells were able to get rid of about 90% of the cancer in the mice. Not all of it. So they weren't 100% successful at treating the cancer, but they held it at bay.
They held it at bay. So my question is then, and I've got to read this now. What was their time frame? Because they must have had a cutoff time frame to do this final check. The reason I ask is, like, in the CAR T training, those T cells are now trained. Supposedly people who've been treated can't get the cancer again. It can't remanifest because now the immune system is at the ready looking for it and doing preemptive strikes before anything can get going. So I'm wondering if these T cells are trained, unless there's specific types of cancers or areas where they just can't get to. Maybe it's just a matter of, these mice don't usually have a long life in an experiment. Maybe with more time, they could actually show more efficacy.
Or it could be done in conjunction with something else in order to really wipe it out.
Yeah, perhaps there's some other treatment that could be used in conjunction. But, the questions do still remain. Is there, this is not all the testing that could possibly be done. So are there situations in which these cells get it wrong and attack healthy cells? Because, as I said previously, MR1 is found on healthy cells as well. It is a cell surface marker that's involved in recognizing self and non-self. So are there situations in which maybe the metabolites that bring it to the surface and bind that MR1 to the surface are misrecognized? Or maybe there are healthy cells that could produce the same metabolites as the cancer cells and be misrecognized. So maybe there's something in the recognition that we don't know yet.
So this is one of those few instances, though, where you could conceivably move to human trials rather quickly, because there are people with very advanced stages of cancers, which, of course, this treatment might not be as effective. It might be better to use it early on. However, you could
we don't know anything.
You could accelerate actually to human trials quickly, in that you're dealing with people who have a very bleak outcome.
Right, absolutely. And in those cases, it's the rapid movement of promising treatments is very important.
You have, it's when you get to these later stages of any disease where they're going to become terminal, and perhaps rather quickly. We could put a number on it. We could say it's 6 months, and you have one more arrow in the quiver in terms of treatment to combat it. I can't imagine anyone turning it down.
Yeah. The second question, I mean, this is among many, but another question is whether or not the question is whether or not this immune cell, this cancer-killing immune cell, is found in everyone, or maybe some people have them and others don't. Where does this immune cell come from? Does this immune cell have something to do with whether some people advance more quickly in their cancers versus others? Like, we don't know how it already appears in our populations. And that is a very interesting biological question. If it is a cancer protective cell, how is it propagating through our populations? Like, what kind of genetics lie behind it as well?
Yeah.
Yeah, so there are very interesting questions, a lot of questions as yet unanswered. We found a cell that seems to have this ability. And so there are many more tests to be done. But yeah, they've only started working in the mouse model, but if they can move fast and keep working quickly on figuring this out, maybe it will be another quiver in our collection of arrows that we can shoot at cancer.
Yeah. And of course, the thing we all have to appreciate about this is they used existing T cells. This is not a drug that was manufactured
No.
separately through science to attack.
No,
We have discovered within the actual ecosystem of the body, there's a thing for that. Right?
Yes, this was found. These are cells isolated from people. They haven't been modified. These T cells have not been modified. These are naturally existing cells.
Start with nature first, and then go through the harder things if you can't find it.
Yes.
Start with the natural environment. I love it.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's great. I just want to put, may treat all cancer, caveat, little asterisks. We don't know yet, but hey,
it
it's
may
really
set us
cool.
down to a path that could eventually lead to. But I like this. I like this story, of course, very much. It sounds like it's working in the vein of other things that have come about recently that have been extremely effective. I mean, the CAR T, we're talking about the couple percentage chance of having that cascading effect. When it works, the rest of the time, it's something insane like 78 hours later, the patient is cancer free. It's a ridiculously quick turnaround and can't get that cancer again. For the lymphoma.
I just like the idea of it doesn't matter what kind of cancer you have. This is for you. That's it. Done.
Yeah.
Cure all. Pretty great.
Let's keep an eye on that one.
All. Now, and speaking of cure-alls, I think, Justin, there's an outbreak right now. And you have a story about this outbreak. People may have heard of the novel coronavirus that has come from Wuhan, China, where numerous individuals in the hundreds, possibly over 1,000, have been sickened by this respiratory disease related to MERS and SARS. And there is a question as to its pandemic nature.
It supposedly went pandemic. So supposedly we just got a case in Washington.
It's in Washington.
So
it's in Washington.
That's the definition, right? It changed continents. So it's now a pandemic.
That's where we're going next month.
That's where we're headed. Yes, that's exactly where we're headed. So one of the things to just before anybody wants to panic, you can panic if you want to. The latest statistic I have seen is that 470 people have confirmed to be infected by this. And we've known about it for 10 days, something along this line. That 470 who have been confirmed to be infected are in a city of 11 million.
Yeah.
So that's 0.00004% of the population at the ground zero over a 10-day-ish incubation period have been affected. That's not a phenomenally runaway scary number yet. 9 people have died from it. So out of that 470, that's about a 2% mortality rate. That might actually be less than the regular flu, or pretty comparable.
It's not a high mortality rate, but
we're not
spreading.
Talking about yes. However, this is interesting to me because it's sort of coming from a familiar place, which is a Chinese meat market. This is it has spread to some other places too, because this is a city of 11 million people. It's a big hub in China. It's a rather popular place for people traveling. Also, I think isn't it the New Year celebration is going on? So there's a lot of a lot of activity going on. It's in Hong Kong now. It's spread to Singapore, Thailand, Japan, and Washington. So this story has been published early online in the Journal of Medical Virology. Study notes that patients who became infected with the virus, which they have the name here, 2019 nCoV, by the World Health Organization, were exposed to wildlife animals at a wholesale market where seafood, poultry, snakes, bats, farm animals, and from the sound of it, also like some not farm animals. I heard there was like deer there, something called a raccoon dog, which I've never even heard of. Last time we had a scary pandemic virus originating from a Chinese meat market, we eventually discovered that bats were the reservoir. And it was people who had handled, killed, sold wild animals made up nearly 40% of the first cases. Earliest episodes were also among people who were more likely to live within walking distance of the wildlife market. This time, human-to-human transfer is occurring. Chinese officials have confirmed that there are 14 healthcare workers that have contacted the virus who weren't interacting with the wildlife markets, apparently. And the patient that is in Washington has said that he merely walked through Wuhan. So he was close to the area, but didn't report having been involved in the marketplace itself. So, but don't blame the bats, because this time they have identified where the virus came from, and it's snakes.
Snakes. Wait.
But not just snakes. It's also bats. So, by conducting a detailed genetic analysis of the virus and comparing it with the available genetic information on different viruses from various geographic locations and host species, investigators concluded that the 2019 nCoV appears to be a virus that formed from a combination of a coronavirus found in bats and another coronavirus of an unknown origin. In this combination, this resulting virus developed a mixed recombination of a viral protein that recognizes and binds to receptors on host cells. And this is, they then believe it was, they have uncovered finally evidence that it resided in snakes before being transmitted to humans. This recombination step within the viral receptor binding protein may have allowed for the cross-species transmission then from snake to human. But
this is I rarely I would not have thought, hey, snakes, yes, that's a problem for virus transfer. It's always bats or some kind, like you mentioned, all these mammals. I mean we've got also the bird
Birds.
the bird viral pools, but a reptile.
Well,
This is
birds and
different.
reptiles, they're
bat. This is bat and something into reptile. So, and one of the things that is being pointed to as it comes from a similar vector between the source and the exposure to humans is these markets where lots of different types of live animals are being kept. I was joking with Blair about whether or not you ever get to take there's like a take your dog to the zoo day.
Yeah.
Because I thought I was always thinking it'd be funny. It's like you're just like, okay, you're barking at the dogs. Here's a lion. How do you react to that? Are you going to be a good? But no, there's and the reason that you don't allow that, aside from
quarantine rules. Yes.
Is quarantine rules.
Every time a new animal comes into a zoo in the United States, whether they've been from another zoo and have a full, clean bill of health, no matter what, they go through a quarantine. They go in a specialized facility, usually attached to the zoo hospital, and that animal is separated from all of the other animals for 30, 60, or 90 days, depending on their fecal results, depending on all sorts of other studies and what types of animals they are. Every human that goes into that space has to put on basically like surgical clothes before you go in, shoe covers. You have to dip your feet in and out. And that's
dipping your feet in and out of like a bleach thing. That you step into? Okay.
And that's because even though I might not be able to catch something from a peccary, a pig relative, I might be able to carry it on me and give it to another peccary that I'm taking care of later that day, right? And so I think that's also at play here, because I had heard on the news this morning that they had thought that people were only getting this thing from the animals, but now it's been confirmed as going from human to human once a human has contracted it. And so this is a situation where, you know, whether or not the snakes themselves are sick, they were carrying something that could get humans sick. So it's kind of the opposite of that, right? But I mean, we're all animals. And the bugs that live on us and the bugs that live on other animals can't be that different. It's not surprising that they can hitch a ride one way or the other.
Yeah, and hopefully this doesn't become a pandemic that kills all life on the planet right as we cured cancer. Wouldn't that be the thing?
Yeah.
But we just cured cancer.
So with this I will also throw in, since I was listening to the news about this earlier, that what was suggested, if you are concerned about this and you live in one of these areas where it's being reported, is if you have flu symptoms, specifically if you have a fever, you should go get checked out. Make sure you don't have this. And if you're going to places where you know that there are cases, wear a mask.
Yeah. Yes,
but
you can wear a mask and protect yourself, and wash your hands.
Wash your hands.
Yes.
All that
but
good
until
stuff.
further notice, it's still a pneumonia. It's a flu.
Yeah, it's
still just the flu. Right now, it's just the flu.
It's a bad one.
I don't know if it's even that bad.
I think what's most interesting is that this is maybe a test of the response. You know, the response practices that were put in place after SARS. So how do the countries around the world respond when they find a new virus that has human pandemic potential? How do they respond to limit the spread of that disease? And how do they respond to protect not just their own citizens, but those of other nations? And so that I think is, you know, we will learn from this, even if it doesn't end up being much of concern. You know, it could end up being, even if it is another flu, that's something that we have to be worried about during the cold and flu season. It's another thing to be worried about.
So when we travel to Washington State next month, if they pull us out of line in the airport to test our temperature, I will comply because I'll know why they're checking. And you know what?
I'm going to drop my bags and run.
Oh no!
Just
because.
Just because.
Okay.
Feels appropriate.
Because. Justin, do you want to have another story here?
Yeah. So. Oh, what happened? Are we there?
Mm-hmm.
I'm here. Are you there?
What happened? I don't know what happened. Is it? I totally lost your audio for a sec. Sorry. Another story. I've got 4 billion years ago, Mars had a dense atmosphere. Mars lost its dense atmosphere when it lost its magnetic field. It sort of faded away. And then came the solar winds, and they blew and they stripped the atmosphere away. So now we have the Martian environment as we have today. However, the fact that it had an environment or an atmosphere at one point has been in one of the intriguing arguments for the possibility that there could have been life there, that life could have gotten started there once upon a time. New research from the Tokyo Institute of Technology now suggests early Mars may have had oceans, and not just any old bodies of water, but similar to those on Earth. They found fundamental properties of natural waters in salinity, in pH, and in hydrogen and oxygen levels within the sediments of the Gale crater. These are telltale hints of an ancient ocean, along with an ancient atmosphere. Then we would have what we would consider to be a very decent recipe for a planet that could host life. And then I was kind of looking at the story, and then there's an old story. It's from a couple years ago, but one of the things that bugs me about Mars not having a magnetic field that came up, and I think when we were talking to the astrophysicist at the Cal Academy for Sketchfest was, well, then how are we going to terraform it? how are we going to put an atmosphere on Mars to send people to live there if it's just always just going to leak out? It's just going to get blown away. And apparently, the Marsifest destiny of terraforming and colonizing Mars has a plan, in at least proposed by NASA, which I thought was interesting enough to share. One of the solutions NASA has thought up for this is to create a giant inflatable magnetic dipole and position it in the Lagrange point. Lagrange point is a point in space that's sort of an in-between, where it's not exactly an orbit. It can just be placed there and an object will just sit. It's sort of equidistance, I guess, from Mars to the sun with a little bit of...
Yeah, it's the place where the gravitational fields kind of balance each other.
Yeah, it's balanced. It's not pulling one way or the other. So you could just drop it there. And this deflection shield would work kind of like a miniature magnetic field and have a shielding effect. Wouldn't be complete, but it might be enough to allow for a fledgling atmosphere and a pretty decent increase in temperature on the surface of Mars, along with that a little bit of atmosphere that it could hold. So there's a little hope to one of those things that I thought was like, this is going to ruin the whole reason or the whole proposition of going to Mars. Yeah, we may have a solution. However, can't have any space junk in the way if we're going to put a thing there. So nobody else can use that spot. Somebody's got to call it, like dibs.
It depends on the. I think they're going to be putting the James Webb Space Telescope in one of those spots, aren't they? One of the Lagrange.
Well, I mean, Lagrange point. I guess if it's just sitting there, if it's not in orbit, it shouldn't be running into anything. Let's see.
They'll be hanging out. It'll be the drive-in space movie theater. They're all parked. Staring out into space. Did you hear about the naming contest for the new Mars rover?
Oh no.
Did it get Rover McRover face?
It did not. It did not get Rover McRover face.
That's good.
Oh.
NASA is holding a new contest, and they've given K-12 students the chance to put a bunch of names in, and now they have chosen the finalists that the public is allowed to vote for. And so we have perseverance, tenacity, vision, fortitude, courage, promise, endurance, clarity, ingenuity. And I have seen many people saying that the winner has to be Vision because it's being launched in 2020.
Oh, that's a good one.
So it would be the 2020 Vision rover.
I was expecting one of them to be something like Batman.
No, they're all these very descriptive, powerful words.
I will just mention that Vision is the name of a superhero.
Oh, it is. That would be good on that sense. Yeah.
Must be one of the new ones.
He's part of the Avengers.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just wonder how they got down to these finalist names. I mean, they're very thesaurus-y. It's like, hey, the teacher got together with the students and they pulled out a thesaurus and they're like, we're going to use our big words. Why is there no Rover McRover face? Why is there no silly name there? Why?
The teachers vetted them for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm a little let down at the creativity of our nation's school children.
I don't know. I also feel like this could be one of those situations where you see like in a movie or a TV show, you see a kid's drawing, quote unquote, and you're like, kid didn't draw. That's not a kid's. No. That's an adult drew that and was like, it looks like a kid's drawing because they put the R backwards. I feel like this is that they gave the kids. A lot of these teachers probably came up with them themselves. And then they were like, all right, kids, which one do you want?
Which one?
I do occasionally watch a little bit of NASA TV. And every once in a while, they will have a class that will be asking questions of an astronaut in space. And they're reading them, and it's obviously the first time they've ever seen the question. I think it's I do think that is a little bit of a lost opportunity to have. You're giving a
Real interactions.
Written the question for them to read to the astronaut. Just let them ask questions. Let them ask the questions. Get out the way.
How do you poop?
Yeah, that's gonna be number one. Like,
question.
we're gonna answer this one again. All right. Very
Are
carefully.
you afraid of the sounds that the space debris makes?
Oh yeah.
It tinkles up.
That's a good one.
Sorry. Oh, too soon?
Oh boy.
Oh, you know what though? It is not too soon for.
What is it?
It's time. It's not too soon. It's never too soon for Blair's Animal Corner.
With Blair.
She loves our creatures, great and small. Biped, millipede, no pet at all. You want to hear about animals? She's your girl. Except for giant pandas and squirrels. There's Animal Corner.
What you got, Blair?
Oh, I was waiting. Your lips were moving, but I couldn't hear you. And then it came through. So I have an amazing story. See if I can't hype this up too much. It's a groundbreaking story about the lowly rattlesnake. So rattlesnakes, yeah, I mean, people are scared of them, right? So rattlesnakes here in California, the only venomous snake here in California. But rattlesnakes actually love them in terms of venomous snakes because they have their own warning system. So other snakes like coral snakes, they'll sneak right up on you. But rattlesnakes, nah. They're shaking their rattle going, stay the heck away from me. I do not want to bite you. Listen to my rattle. Are you scared?
They don't always use them. I appreciate
then
when
that
they do.
means that you snuck up on them if
Ooh,
they
I'm
didn't
good.
use them.
I'm sneaky.
So anyway, rattlesnakes, they have all of these amazing adaptations for survival. But a new one that I've learned about this week in science that explains part of their very difficult lifestyle is all about how they drink water. They live in the desert. So as a desert, the number one thing that makes a desert is less than 10 inches of rain a year. So that means that when it does rain, animals need to take advantage of that in the best way possible. They have to get that water as efficiently as they can. And so this new study is looking at how rattlesnake skin is specially adapted to catch water and funnel it to their mouths.
What?
The southwestern U.S., rattlesnakes can drink rain droplets from the scales on their back, and researchers are looking at the exact makeup and structure of their skin that allows for this behavior. So they looked at the surface wettability and nanotexture of scales in western diamondbacks, that's our rattlesnake, and then two other species of desert-dwelling snakes. That's the desert king snake and the Sonoran gopher snake, both, by the way, non-venomous snakes, both constrictors. And what they found when they dropped water onto these snakes' backs is they found that the droplets beaded up, coalesced, and stuck to the rattlesnake's scales. So they were covered in little water droplets, whereas they formed shallow puddles and slipped off on the king snake and the gopher snake. Doing electron microscopy of the rattlesnake scales, they found nanochannels that create a labyrinth-like network. And in the other two snakes, they didn't have those features. And so these scales were able to aid in water collection by providing a sticky, hydrophobic surface that pins water. It's like little bowls that pins the water to the surface. And then the snakes can kind of just lick their backs and get all the water that they could possibly need.
Wow. So they're just their own water collection device.
Yes. So a couple things. So one, nowhere in this press release that I read does it bring up the fact that they tested a venomous and two non-venomous snakes. Now, it makes sense that they would need more liquid water if they're a venomous snake, because venom is a liquid. So you might need more liquids in general, right? But I think the other thing that comes to mind for me is that if we can recognize exactly what about their scales makes them so good at collecting and holding onto water, this is a natural progression to create a water collecting device as humans. You could use all of this information to help try to grab dew or fog.
Yeah.
Or rain.
However, you're forgetting the story from a couple weeks ago. That fog's got a lot of mercury in it.
Well.
But actually...
Win some, you lose some.
Yes.
Anyway, so yeah, I mean, it's a simple story, but I still find it fascinating that snake scales can vary so much, even within the same environment, for this very specific adaptation.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing the different species, how it all how it works out.
Yeah, and so moving from the driest habitat on the planet, desert, to the wettest land habitat on the planet, the rainforest, I have an amazing story about parrots and how they can cooperate with invisible partners. So this is a study from the University of Southern Denmark. I can't say the letter M today, apparently. Southern Denmark.
Not Denmark.
Yeah, this is the congestion. Peach-fronted conures. They have shown to do something that is, as far as we know, a first in animal intelligence studies. Now, before I get any further, I'm going to say that that's probably because we haven't been testing this very much, or we don't know how to test other species effectively in it. I'm guessing, even though this is a first, this will not be the last of these findings. But these peach-fronted conures are the first to be able to solve a task with a partner they can't see.
Ooh, imaginary bird friends.
Exactly. So the task was, it was a traditional method of testing for cognitive abilities where two individuals are presented with an end of a string. If they're pulled at the same time, a snack is released. If they don't pull it simultaneously, they lose, basically. No snack is released. This has been done by ravens, rooks, Australian greys, New Caledonian crows, lots of animals we've talked about before on the show about having high cognitive capabilities. But when you add a visual barrier in between them and their buddy, suddenly they cannot solve this puzzle. One will pull too early, or they'll just pull and hang on it, or they won't figure it out. So then in this huge sample size of 4 conures, so that's a whole thing too. But with 4 conures, they presented them with more and more complex collaborative tasks, each with them being able to see or not see their partner. They measured how well they did. And in the most difficult experiment, they found that a bird in a test box where they could see their own end of the string, then they would let another bird in behind a wall after they already saw the string. So already they have to kind of do some impulse control. Don't pull the string until you hear the other bird come in. Then the 2 birds have to figure out how to pull them at the exact same time to both get a snack. So they were all pretty good at solving the task, but they found that different birds had different methods for solving it. So one would pull, but then let go when they realized there was no other tension on the string or something like that, and then pick it up again when the partner began pulling. But another one, for example, would pick up the string, hold it in their mouth, and wait, and then pull when the partner came in. So the different tactics as well, but somehow they were able to communicate with each other that this rope was happening, that they were going to pull at the same time. They did 12 different couple combinations, and for the most part, they were able to solve the tests very well. But the most difficult tasks had about a 40% success rate, which is still better than 0 in all of those other tests that were done with other bird species. They wouldn't even wait at all. The New Caledonian crows, rooks, ravens, or African greys, even when they could see the partner, they wouldn't be able to wait. They'd just pull on the string. So the reason I brought up at the very beginning here that parrots are from the rainforest is that I think this is the interesting wrinkle for this study, is that the rainforest is not only the wettest habitat on the planet, it is also the loudest habitat on the planet. And that's not just because of rain hitting all of the leaves of the trees, which is very loud, but it's also because it's one of the most biodiverse regions. And so everybody's kind of shouting over each other in the rainforest. And this is why parrots are so loud, is because they shout at each other. They're gregarious animals, they're social animals, but they have to shout over howler monkeys, the rain, jaguars, other parrots. They have to shout over each other to try to talk. Hey, Greg, hey, did you find any good fruit over there? So like there's a lot of shouting going on. And so they're vocal creatures. Sometimes the plants are so dense you can't see the other parrot, but you're shouting at each other, right? So this makes sense to me that they would be able to communicate vocally to figure this out. And in fact, in the test studies, they found that they did change vocalizations, and their vocalizations did seem to be more intense in some way when the other parrot was released into the room. So the next step of this research is that they actually recorded the vocalizations during these tests, and they plan to analyze the vocalization recordings to see if there's some sort of specific communication happening with the birds. Spoiler alert. Yeah, there's got to be.
There has to be.
There's
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're vocal animals. Yes, they are meant to communicate. Of course they can do it.
Absolutely.
Make it happen. A total tangential thought that I had, though, when you're talking about these animals, these birds shouting at each other in the jungles and
Yes.
this loud environment that they're in with these other loud animals. We have all these like questions about hearing loss and, you're not supposed to listen to anything over, 100 and whatever decibels. That's damaging to your hair cells and to your hearing. What about animals who live in these loud environments? Do they have mechanisms at play in their ears that maintain their ears?
That is an excellent question.
Or do like parrots and howler monkeys start going deaf when they get older?
That's a great question. And, howler monkeys may only live 20 to 30 years, I think. But parrots can live over 80. So
Right.
that is a good question. And I think, hey, graduate students listening who haven't found a study
This is a
to look at,
question.
this is a great area to look at. I think this is,
Yes.
yes, Kiki, you're on it.
Yes.
Yeah, or you could study the brains of parrots and see how it is that they are able to pick out the interesting sounds in that
In
dense
all the
audio
cacophony.
jungle.
Yeah.
How do you focus your hearing to pay attention to just what you want to in a crowded room with everybody talking at once?
Yeah, absolutely.
You could bet you could get a grant from a hearing aid company.
Oh, yeah.
Figure that one out.
Whole new parrot ears from Bausch and Lomb.
A couple of quick stories at the end of our show here. I have a psychoactive mood bump.
Uh-huh.
Researchers they didn't follow people. They went to festivals. They went to 6 festivals in the United States and the UK, surveyed 1,200 Americans and British festival goers and asked them about their use of psychoactive substances, age, gender, level of religiosity, politics, level of education, all that kind of stuff. They were asked whether they'd had transformative experiences at the festival, and they found out that a large percentage of these individuals were drinking alcohol. Some 80% of them drank alcohol at the festival, but the people, they say that They did not seek out obviously drunk or on substances type of people. They tried to find normal looking people, but 80% of them reported having had alcoholic beverages at the festivals, 50% used cannabis, and 26.6% used psychedelics. Researchers were trying to figure out, they're really looking into the effects that psychedelic drugs, mushrooms, LSD have on people's moods, finding that results were strongest in people who had had the drugs in the last 24 hours, though most seemed to be experiencing an afterglow hours after the drugs would have worn off. The researchers were trying to do this to see if field experiments mirrored effects that had been seen in laboratory tests, in which people reported having feeling greater connectedness with people and feelings of mood change and transformativeness with the taking of these substances. And lo and behold, that's what their research found. Anyway, it's an interesting study. I just thought it was fun that researchers decided to run around festivals asking people about their drug use.
Well, isn't something that they say to people to suggest that you don't do certain drugs, including psychedelics, that there's a really bad come down from them? Which this kind of I've heard that there's a really bad kind of drop, and that's one of the things they tell you is like, oh, you got to be careful of the drop off when it starts to wear off. But this is sounding like the exact opposite of that.
Yes, that the experiences are, changing people's perspectives on their social interactions. That change in perspective is what they think is contributing to these afterglows that last for a period of time afterwards. Yeah. And then, hey, you might not want to do the psychoactive drugs. That's great. They're not legal anyway in the United States. But we stress out a lot in this country, and I don't have a solution for that stress, but I can tell you that science has finally determined that yes, stress makes you go gray. Yes, from a published article in Nature this week, researchers found, and this is actually very interesting, the mechanism behind how it turns the hair gray is very interesting, because you would think that, stress hormones, the cortisol increases in your body would potentially be affecting the melanocytes or the cells that cause color to be in your hair. And that's not how it works. What's happening is that stress is activating sympathetic nerves, and sympathetic nerves are releasing noradrenaline, otherwise known as norepinephrine. The norepinephrine is causing melanocyte, these melanin-producing cells in the follicles of the hairs, causing the melanocyte stem cells that are basically in a non-proliferating state. They're not dividing, they're not making color, whatever. They're not doing anything. They're just like, we're sleepy, we're quiescent, hello. They get zapped. It's like bing, 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 norepinephrine, and they go, I gotta grow. And so they get busted out of their quiet state. They start dividing and proliferating, and basically they run themselves out. So stress depletes your melanin producing cells in the follicles of your hair through nerve signaling. It's the nerves. You're activating, or sympathetic nerve fibers are releasing a positive feedback neurotransmitter that's making stem cells do their thing.
It's just a bang and bust, huh?
Yes. Yeah. So if you can avoid the stress, you will not cause those stem cells to deplete and they will be around longer, and thus you will be able to hold on to your natural color for a longer period of time.
Just take a chill pill.
Take a chill pill. Still stress, but the mechanism I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah, very interesting. That's like an old wives' tale that's true.
Yeah. Blair, what happened? What's going on with your last story here?
Oh my goodness. Wolf puppies spontaneously fetch.
Oh, yeah?
Yes, this was a study where there were 2 wolf litters. Then they were just kind of seeing how puppies interacted with humans in different environments throughout their life. And then they tested, so 2 wolf litters just kind of paid no attention to the humans, but it was actually 3 test groups. The third litter, some of them went for a ball when a human threw it in a test space and then responded to social cues to bring it back. So basically, like if I gave you a dog you've never met before who didn't know how to play fetch, if you threw a ball, it would instinctively run after that ball. And if you went, come here, bring me the ball, that dog would have a high likelihood of bringing that ball right back to you. But as we all know, certain dogs just can't fetch. That's fine. Anyway, wolves, some wolf puppies, it was again a very small group. This was a test on 13 individuals. So 3 of the 13 spontaneously would fetch with stranger encouragement. And so this is a small group, but it is still proof that the wolves have the capability somewhere in there to read the social cues of a human, which is kind of counterintuitive to a lot of what we talk about with wolves. And it's counterintuitive to the idea that wolves and dogs, this is their main difference, is that dogs are oriented towards humans and wolves are not. However, it kind of makes sense that if there's a small group of wolves that inherently have this ability to read human cues, that would track, that would create a self-selection that could lead to the evolution of dog.
Yeah, sure. But does it even have to be a small subset of them? You know, maybe
Right.
or actually thinking about our previous excuse me, conversations about personality types.
Mm-hmm.
There's no reason that different wolves wouldn't have different personalities.
Yeah, absolutely. And so those different personalities are variants, just like coat color, tail length, or whatever. And so that can be selected for either just naturally based on natural pressures or by other pressures, like the fact that being able to read a human cue gets you free dinner. And then, you know, whether that's a natural pressure or a human pressure, that can help kind of build that relationship and build change.
Yeah. Yep. Oh, animal behavior got its start early on. Food rewards.
Yeah. I will say, though, also that as a former zookeeper, lots of animals have the ability to read human cues. Whether that's inherent from the time they're a baby or not, or if they gain it over time, if they're in human care. The fact that I could call a rhino to come for a banana treat, that means there's the ability for these animals, if you're smart and you know how to associate certain beings with things. I mean, years after I stopped being a zookeeper, certain animals would run up to the fence line when they heard my voice because they recognized me as a purveyor of treats. So there's definitely there's something I think that this story is missing, which is just that we're all animals, and if an animal is smart enough to recognize linked things, if they see fun, they might take that opportunity for fun no matter who it is or what it is. And that might be a human.
More likely to be a social animal than an independent one.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, we have come to the end of the show, and we have unfortunately lost Justin in the depths of the internet. He has succumbed to a failing internet connection this evening. But we kept going, and we're sorry to see him go early, but it's time for us to end our show anyway. Thank you, everyone, for watching our show tonight, for listening to the show as a podcast. Thank you for being a part of This Week in Science and the show. Thank you to Fada. Thank you so much for helping us with show notes and social media. Thank you to Gord for helping in the chat room and making that run. Thank you, Identity4, for recording the show so that we can have a show for podcast. It is a necessary thing. It's wonderful that we have your help doing that. And thank you to our Patreon sponsors. Thank you to Paul Disney, Ed Dyer, Andrew Swanson, Craig Landon, Ed Stu Pollock, Philip Shane, Ken Hayes, Charlene Henry, Joshua Fury, Steve DeBell, Alex Wilson, Tony Steele, Richard Porter, Mark Masaros, Bob Calder, Jack, Matthew Litwin, Jason Roberts, Bill Kay, Eric Knapp, Richard Brian Condren, Dave Neighbor, Ben Bignell, Justin, Taylor P.S., Josiah Zahner, Howard Tan, Donald Mundus, Sarah Forvar, Dan K., Matt Bass, Darwin Hannon, Patrick Pecoraro, Gene Tellier, John Gridley, Corinne Benton, Adam LaJoy, Sarah Chavis, Rodney Lewis, Tiffany Boyd, Mountain Sloth, Seth O'Gradney, Stephen Alberon, John Ratnaswamy, Dave Friedel, Daryl Myshak, Paul Ronovich, Sue Doster, Dave Wilkinson, Doodles, Kevin Reardon, Christoph Zucknerek, Ashies Panch, Ulysses Adkins, Artyom, Rick Ramus, Paul, John McKee, Jason Olds, Brian Carrington, Christopher Dreyer, Lisa Suzuki, Jim Drapeau, Greg Riley, Sean Lamb, Steve Leisman, Kurt Larson, Rita Garcia, Marjorie, Gary S., Robert, Greg Briggs, Brendan Minish, Christopher Rappin, Flying Out, Aaron Luthen, Matt Sutter, Mark Hessen, Flo, Kevin Parachan, Byron Lee, and E.O. If you would like to help make that list longer, please support us on Patreon. You can find the link at patreon.com/thisweekinscience. Thank you to all of our Patreon supporters. Next week's show will be back once again to talk about science Wednesday evening, 8 p.m. Pacific time at twis.org/live. And if you don't make it, it's okay, because we record this, thanks Identity4, and we make it a podcast. It's also on YouTube and on Facebook. So you have lots of places to find the show.
Thanks for listening. We hope you've enjoyed it. TWIS is also available as a podcast. As Kiki mentioned, you can look for This Week in Science wherever you find your podcasts. If you did enjoy the show, please remember to tell your friends about it and leave a review on iTunes.
Yes. For more information on anything you've heard here today, show notes are going to be available on our website, twis.org. You can also make comments, start listeners with the hosts and other listeners.
You can also contact us directly. You can email Kirsten at thisweekinscience.com, Justin at twisminion@gmail.com, or Blair, me, at blairbaz@twis.org. Just be sure to put TWIS, TWIS, somewhere in that subject line, or you got it, your email will be spam filtered into oblivion. You can also hit us up on Twitter, where we are at TWIS Science, that TWI Science, at Dr. Kiki, at Jackson Fly, and at Blair's Menagerie. We love your feedback. If there's a topic you would like us to cover or address, or a topic, that too, or a suggestion for an interview, please let us know.
And we will be back here next week, and we hope that you'll join us once again for more great science news.
And if you've learned anything at all from the show tonight, remember.
At all. It's all in your head.
This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science, it's the end of the world. So I'm setting up shop, got my banner unfurled. It says the scientist is in, I'm gonna sell my advice. Show them how to stop the robots with a simple device. I'll reverse global warming with a wave of my hand. And all it'll cost you is a couple of grand. 'Cause this week's science is coming your way. So everybody listen to what I say. I use the scientific method for all that it's worth, and I'll broadcast my opinion all over the earth. 'Cause it's This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 I've got one disclaimer, and it shouldn't be news, that what I say may not represent your views, but I've done the calculations and I've got a plan. If you listen to the science, you may just yet understand that we're not trying to threaten your philosophy. We're just trying to save the world from jeopardy. And This Week in Science is coming your way. So everybody listen to everything we say. And if you use our method instead of rolling a die, we may rid the world of toxoplasma gondii. Cause it's This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 Got a laundry list of items I want to address, from stopping global hunger to dredging Loch Ness. I'm trying to promote more rational thought, and I'll try to answer any question you've got. So how can I ever see the changes I seek when I can only set up shop 1 hour a week? This Week in Science is coming your way. You better just listen to what we say, and if you've learned anything from the words that we've said, then please just remember it's all in your head. Cause it's This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 This Week in 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 Science.
And we have come to the after show. You know, it's almost time to go. It's the after show. It is the after show. Full of science and other things that we want to say. It's science. Oh yeah, it's science. After show. I'm sorry. I had musical theater all over the place sometimes.
That's great. I was looking at
What are you looking at?
Monterey Bay Aquarium's Twitter, which I'm obsessed with.
Oh,
And did you know that all last week they did SHROMP week?
what? Trump?
It was Shrimp week, but they kept mispronouncing the word shrimp. And so the hashtag was SHROMP week. And they even had an Instagram
SHROMP.
filter where you got to see what mispronunciation of the word shrimp you were. So you
That's
could
good.
be a shrump or a shrump or a shrimp
Shrimp.
or a shramp.
I'm a shrimp.
It was so good.
That's
So
awesome.
good.
I like
just-
creative social media. I don't have the time for that personally.
No, but I love it
I don't know
so
how to do it.
much.
It's great. Yeah, that's so fun.
It's so good.
Such a good campaign. All right. I saw Identity 4, February 5th. You will not be able to record the show. I will figure that out. I will take care of it. We have a backup.
Do you want me to set an alarm?
To remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
Great. You got it.
Thank you. That would be great. Thanks.
No, ID4 recording. Do you want to be alerted to that the day before, the hour before? What do you want?
Day of is fine.
Okay.
That would be great.
Tonight. Before I wrote the word tonight, I wanted to know what I was doing. Okay, great. So I'll be on the 5th. Remind me of the time. Yes, please. How about 7 o'clock? Done.
Yes, please.
Great.
Great.
Done and done.
Thank you.
You're so
Thank
very
you
welcome.
much.
So very welcome.
Ed, are we going to Seattle? Yes. They just had a shooting, so bullets and viruses. Ed says we need to bring our bulletproof vests and face masks.
No. I don't like this.
No. Speaking of which, I need to start. I took a week off of promoting things, but yeah, I gotta talk up the fact that we're going to be doing our show from AAAS. I don't know how many people in our audience are going to AAAS. We'll have to figure that out. And we should probably schedule some kind of a meetup in Seattle.
Yeah.
I know there's an identity in Seattle. There may be others. Identity says, it's a city. We always have shootings. And you always have viruses, too. It's true. Yeah, meetup. Let's do that. Shrimps.
Oh, it was a dispute in front of a McDonald's.
Oh, dear.
Hmm.
Noodles would like Dr. Jah back for general science topics. I like that he says the bad news. Okay, would you please come back and tell us more bad news?
That was fascinating.
Isn't it fascinating? I mean, the idea of how much stuff is out there and how quickly it's getting filled up. I mean, and it's because these things are in orbits, that means it's much more complicated. Things move. They're moving. In space. Good night, Fada. Thank you. Thank you. Have a wonderful night. We also have shootings, not going in the tourist brochure. Yeah, hopefully not.
Oof.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I don't. Oh, Thunder Beaver, you were going to go to Seattle for AAAS? Yes, AAAS is expensive. It is expensive. But they have the open family days. But I don't think I don't think the podcast stuff is in the open family days. I think it's like only in the exhibition hall. So it's only for festival goers. But yeah, it's only for the not festival, for the conference goers who are paying to go. And Identity 4. Oh. Oh, yeah. But I think, yeah, but I do want to promote. I definitely want to promote. Well, because AAAS people, there are science people. I bet there are scientists who listen to our show, grad students and scientists who will be at the conference. Adopt me. It's wonderful. Dum 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 dum. We should have a meetup. We should do that.
Mm-hmm.
If not a live podcast, we're all going to be in town, and I know Justin will want a beer.
Yeah. Seattle has good beer, right? Isn't that a thing?
Yeah. I don't know if they're as IPA-ish as Oregon, as Portland.
That's okay.
You'll survive.
I like lots of beers besides IPAs. I just do like IPAs, but also Brian does not like IPAs, so he'll be pleased that there's something besides that on a menu.
Identity says, yeah, great beer. great.
What's the specialty identity for? What kind of beers?
What kind?
Oh yeah, space dust. Elysium.
You like
Is that
that?
from Seattle? I love that brewery.
Ooh. I had some good beer last time I was up in Seattle.
Oh, that is Seattle. That's awesome.
You're like, we may be
that's
visiting this
very
brewery.
exciting.
Local place.
We
yes,
can go to the original
original.
Starbucks. Oh my god.
But maybe I won't go to that Starbucks. Maybe I'll go to the Starbucks like right across the street from
Across
that
the
Starbucks.
street.
Yeah.
That one has nitro.
It's got the nitro cold
I need
brew
the
is
nitro
really,
one.
the only way I want to have my coffee these days. I can't even take myself seriously sounding like that. Oh yeah, Thunder Beaver. So that is the exciting part. I love meeting people at conferences like AAAS because yes, if I meet awesome people who are doing cool science, then we have to have them as guests. And well, I need to have more guests on the show than I did in 2019. So we're gonna fill up our calendar.
Eventually, you're gonna hit capacity.
I know. We can only have something like 50 guests a year.
Yeah.
Unless we have more shows.
Right.
Which is a possibility. So should we talk about the idea, even though Justin's not here, that we talked about very briefly?
I think I'm with it. I think
You're
it's
with
a great
it.
idea. Because I mean, okay, so just my podcast listening, for example.
Yeah.
There's only one show I listen to that's longer than 45 minutes. And even then, sometimes it takes me weeks to get through an episode. So just knowing my own methods.
Good night, Singing Saw Guy.
If this show was being marketed to me, I think if it was split up, I would cut through it quicker. Which I don't know. I think it's like the thing where like if you double cut a pizza where there's twice as many slices, you get full faster. You don't eat as many slices of pizza. I don't know. There's some weird psychological thing, right? Where like when you finish an episode wanting more, then you're like, yes, give me the next one.
Yes.
So I do really like that idea of, I guess I'll plan it all out on my own. Oh, there she is. It's like, I guess I'll continue this conversation with no one. No, I think it's a great idea to split it up, to do like release the interview. So tonight, for example, was an amazing interview that we didn't want to cut short.
I can't hear you still. What?
Oh, you can't hear me? Hello? Yeah. I didn't touch anything, so it's definitely not me. Oh, my dog is asleep upside down. Oh my god. That's very cute. Oh, she's like this. Upside down. That doesn't look very comfortable. Oh, there she is. Kiki's frozen, I think, maybe. I don't know. Our discussion was, if we chop up the show, we still do the same show, but maybe we'd have the interview as one release, and then we'd have the rest of the show as a second release. So then we'd have 2 almost hour-long releases when we do an interview. Here's information from Kiki. Oh no, Kiki's computer crashed. I'm asking if I should keep going. But anyway, that was the conversation, was if we do like release just the interview as a podcast, was the live show, what you're watching right now, would not change. The video on YouTube afterwards would not change. We're just talking about the audio feed because that is the grand majority of our listeners, our podcast listeners through iTunes. That way, we would just have these 2 separate releases so that we could have those. And then people who love the interview would be able to listen to that kind of distilled. And then if you really wanted your science news, you could listen to that first. I don't know. There's options there. But that's kind of the conversation that we've been having. And then the thing that Kiki was talking about before was cutting it down even more so that you'd have the interview, then you'd have, you know, Kiki's top story, then you'd have Justin's top story, then you'd have the animal corner, and then you'd have the quick stories. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Great.
My computer crashed.
So I was just filling people in on a couple of things we were talking about. Just saying that the video content would not change, but that we would we just split it up half and half when we have interviews, or we'd have the interview release and then we'd have the show. Or we could split up even more, have the interview, have Kiki's stories, have Justin's story, have the animal corner, and then have the quick news, all as separate releases.
Yeah. I mean, the only thing that will change with the video recording is that we will be doing more it'll be sub shows within the longer show. So we'll like instead of starting with the normal disclaimer, what we'll do is like a quick rundown of what I'm thinking is that we'll start with like a quick summary of all the stories that we're going to talk about. And so that'll be that one little show with no discussion, just everything reported. And then we'll start the show with a disclaimer and do that. I mean, I guess it'll, you know, on nights that we have guests, they're going to have to sit around for a little bit longer. So maybe we'll switch it up a little bit on nights that we have guests or something. But yeah.
I think splitting the interview out for sure.
Yeah.
Step 1. And I think I like that also because one of the podcasts I do listen to that's a little longer, they release every Monday, but they will sometimes have bonus episodes that release on Thursdays. So you have the consistency of releasing every week at a specific time, but then there are occasional other drops. So it wouldn't be that weird of a template to follow to have an additional drop on weeks when you do interviews and not having to do that every week. I think that'd be fine.
Yeah. I'm having to confirm that I'm not a robot to get back in the chat room. I will do all of the things.
Under Beaver's into it. He says definitely give the interviews different titles and their own numbering.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it'll, but the original recording on YouTube will be just our same time. Might be, about the same amount of time, maybe a little bit longer, but I don't know. But about the same amount of time on Wednesdays.
Yeah, I think that'd be fine.
Yeah. It'll just be more kind of work on the editing side to chop it all up and publish it into, Yeah. And I just have to I'll just put it all in the one TWIS RSS feed, right? Just
I think so.
Not make a new feed or anything. Just make them shorter looking so people go, hey, that's not so scary.
Yeah.
That's achievable. I can do that. Gaurav Sharma in the YouTube chat room is saying, maybe we can make interviews longer now and include more audience questions.
My dog's sleeping upside down. It's very cute.
Upside down corgis.
Yeah, I looked over
die.
and I only saw white. I was like, that's what, how's, oh.
Take two. What is Ed saying? Take two with an audience. The best stories should go first. Yeah. Oh, yeah. How to insert chapters into the audio version. I don't know how to do that. That's great. I tried doing that once with an online service. I kind of beta tested it a bit, but it was just extra work. I maybe I just need to get an editor and then to do the things.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, and release things on different days. Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
I still
Thunder
think,
Beaver. You got it.
Get somebody in who's studying like media at a local college. Get a legit college intern to do all this.
Mm-hmm. It's hard to talk and listen and follow the chat room. It's true, Ed. It's true. Yeah, it's so funny. I like having my home studio, the stuff downstairs, and it's really convenient on the late nights after the show. I'll just be here and then I go upstairs and go to bed and it's fine. But every once in a while, I also think about, I'm like, it would be nice to have like a production person.
Yes.
Where I could just do the show and there's a production person booping all the buttons.
Yeah.
Boop, 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 and making all the switchings of everything, because that would be really nice. But then it's weird when it's like 11 o'clock at night and I'm like, okay, leave my house now. Goodbye.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, back in the day.
I'm a private person. Yes, you came to my house. You did.
But couldn't they do all that remotely? Like
open arms.
When we were on TWIS, they did all that remotely. I feel like you could definitely, the way StreamYard works, right? You could give them the admin access and they could be doing all the screen sharing and all of it.
It's true. It's true.
And they wouldn't even have to have their own video. So they wouldn't even need a microphone or a fancy microphone or a fancy camera. They would just need to be there to say, okay, I'm here, I'm ready to go. And then they'd hide themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yep. It's true. And they could put pictures up and do the things and
Yep.
Oh, that would up our video game, that's for sure.
It would. And they could be writing down timestamps while we're doing things. And then, yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah, I was trying to write down in the show notes today, like a couple of times things happened, and I wrote down some numbers. I was like, oh, now I can go back and maybe that'll make my editing easier. I'm trying to be proactive.
But wouldn't it be nice if somebody didn't have to also read stories and that was their entire job?
Keep track of that stuff.
Yeah.
Yep. I do need a Bryce.
Twould be great.
Who's Bryce?
I don't know. Or also, I mean, if we could afford him, a Roger of sorts would be great as well.
A Roger would be amazing. Yep.
Someone to time our stories and flash lights at us when we need to move on, and just, it's so hard to do all of it at the same time. I don't know how you do as much as you do at the same time. It's so much.
It's a little bit. It's not surprising that I get lost sometimes. I'm like, what did you? Oh, so let me collect my thoughts.
Yep. Indeed.
Yeah, more Roger. Yeah, the StreamYard setup. I think that if I had a producery person.
Yep.
They would just have the screen that I have right now.
Right.
And they would manage this screen.
Speaking of, you said you're going to miss a couple shows this summer. I need to learn all of that before then.
Yes, you do. So we will. Okay, we'll do a before I go away.
Yes.
You'll be in charge one of the times.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
It sounds very user friendly, but I just don't. I don't
It's
want to have
It's
to.
very user friendly. I honestly am, and I get these emails from the StreamYard people, and like they do videos about their new features and this kind of stuff. They're like these sweet, like they seem like these really nice young men, and they're just computer video people, and they're making this awesome thing, and I'm like, I love them.
I
Like,
mean, not to talk,
I think
not to
you
throw
guys are
shade, but
great. StreamYard's
I like
awesome.
this so much better than what we were doing before.
It's like huge improvement.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Any luck with getting an intern? Not yet, Ed. My intern became a co-host.
Yeah. Yeah. So
That's right. Gaurav is saying train my son.
yeah.
I should train Kai. Kai would probably be great. He still has the attention span of an 8-year-old though, so that's the only problem.
Yeah. By the time he's old enough to be able to do it, he'll probably be too busy.
Yeah. He says he wants to do a TWIS Kids, and I keep talking to him about it, and then he's like, "Oh, I'm going to go play video games." I'm like, "Okay. I'm not going to push you on this, but,
No. It's
it's
hard
up
work.
to him."
Yeah.
Yeah, it's up to him. And I mean, at some point I'll just be like, okay, these are all the things. You tell me if you really want to do it. I think he just wants to get in front of the camera and be a YouTuber.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Identity 4. You have an attention span of an 8-year-old? I think it's a little longer than that. Squirrel. TWIS Kids. Green crayon. What?
I think that was Noodles received the
Yes,
package.
you got
with
the
green crayon on
package.
it. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh. Wow. So I have the same camera as Justin.
Yes,
and
if you move.
It never did the autofocus thing on my laptop, but I think I'm farther away from it than I ever was before.
Mm-hmm.
And so now with my new setup, it does the thing that it used to do to Justin all the time, where I'll move and I'll go out of focus.
And then it's like, focus.
Mm-hmm.
That's a Logitech one, right? It's the one Is
Mm-hmm.
it the Logitech one?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm out of focus. Yeah, it doesn't like me moving around too much. Well, it is. Yeah, show last week was awesome.
Mm-hmm. I don't really remember it because I was so sick. So I appreciate you saying that. It was awesome. I take your word for it.
Yeah, I think it was great. They had done a recording there, but apparently I just got an email back from Heather, our contact with SF Sketchfest, that the recording is not great. So I had been waiting to do the podcast episode because, Identity 4 records it. I didn't know what the podcast audio sounded like from our live performance. But I don't know.
I feel like it's better to put it out than not, right?
Yeah. They're going to send me the files. We will see.
Mm-hmm. I mean, people can choose not to listen if a few minutes in it's tough.
Yeah. Depending on the audio. Thanks, Ed. I'm trying to get interesting topics and interesting people and just, pick whatever sounds better. That's what I need to do. So I'm waiting for those files. But I was laughing because really, I think episode 755 may come out before episode 754.
That's
fine. Sometimes in my brain, I'm like, oh, well, that's out now. So, and then it'll be the lost episode. Where did it go? Or I'll save it for a week that we have a holiday.
Right.
Release it as a surprise episode.
Perfect.
I know your recording's in the Dropbox, and I see you adding your Dropboxes, your files for tonight. I have a lot of stuff to listen to and edit tomorrow. Got some work to do. It's good.
Did we decide we are doing a show the Wednesday before Seattle, right?
It's on the calendar. Did we
No,
decide that
I'm
we are
away
going
from-
to?
Oh, I have calendars right here.
I'm not going to be able to.
I feel like we could have gone either way. I honestly don't remember.
It's
I
on
will
the
not put my-
calendar.
Yeah, I'm looking. Let me see.
I think that we hadn't. It's not the AAAS thing. Isn't on the calendar, is it?
No, it's not. And yes, we do
Because-
have a TWIS show on the 12th listed.
Because we hadn't confirmed the
Right.
AAAS when we made the calendar.
Right. So
Um,
either way, I mean,
I will not have I'll be traveling Thursday, just like you guys,
Yeah.
and I will not have I'm going to be driving up probably.
oof. Yeah, and I mean, if we're prepping 2 shows that weekend, that's like a lot.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, it's an hour and a half of content, but it's a lot. And
okay, we can let people know. I think that's fine.
yeah.
Because if
We'll
I'm
let
leaving
people
on
know.
Thursday, I'm going to be getting ready anyway. I'm probably going to be at work super late.
And I have a lot going on that weekend, so it would be better for me if we just do the AAAS shows and then I package them up and turn it into podcast episodes.
That is fine by me.
Okay.
I think that makes sense.
Ooh, driving? Yes, I'll probably drive up. I don't know. I might take the train, but
That sounds fun.
yeah. We'll see. We'll see what I will do. It might be nice to have a car there, but I don't know if I'm going to need one. We're going to figure it all out.
Oh, I should have sent my flights to Justin. I only sent them to you. Because then he can... I don't know where he'll be flying from, but...
Hey, yeah. I don't know what his plans are. I was hoping we could talk about it tonight, but then he disappeared. Oh, you took the train? Yeah, you take the train. Fada likes taking the train also. I haven't done much. I like trains. That would be fun. We will try to be live from AAAS, Gaurav, for sure. I always like trying to do live, and if we have an internet connection that is strong enough, I'm going to do my best to do live. And I think was our setup okay for everybody from
Last week?
the Cal Academy? Yeah, was it okay? Probably loud.
Yeah, it won't be as loud, probably.
Hmm. Yes,
Oh,
train
my.
rides are great because you can work on stuff. You're right, Ed.
Oh, the train is fun.
Oh, Hot Rod says, yeah, that worked well. So depending on how AAAS has their stuff set up, the setup that we had, it might work just fine again, which would be great. Okay, you could still hear everything. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, and we can...
Thanks,
Maybe
Ed.
we can make Brian hold the camera or something, depending on the setup, and might be able to do a little bit more fun stuff.
Yeah.
If we have a video element in the background like we did for the Alberta Rose.
Yes, I
can
think
set-
they will have something like that available for us. Yeah.
And we can make him in charge of that too.
Yeah.
We make him earn his keep.
You do that. You do it.
You do all that stuff we were just talking about pawning off on somebody else.
Delegation.
Yeah.
I mean, he has to do his work, right?
Yeah. Yeah. He's the IT coordinator.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know if he got approved, by the way?
I have no idea.
Okay. I don't know if I should ask him to check his email.
Identity 4, yeah, I'll stop by your house and I'll run in and raid your refrigerator. Thank you for your food.
Huh.
Yeah, a 360 cam would be awesome, Hot Rod. Yeah, it would be fun to be able to spy on the audience during a live show like that. That'd be awesome. Exactly. A beer and dash, for sure. For sure. Average, not the best for listening for 2 hours. Yep. Yep. Oh, yeah, what did I do last Friday? So, while Blair was sick and Justin went home, on Friday I had a little adventure day and I went to the Patreon offices in San Francisco and I met with people at Patreon and we talked about how I can Patreon better and they let me record a little thank you video for patrons that I'll be releasing to the Patreon patrons. Some probably Friday this week.
That's fun.
Yeah, it was fun. It was just a very I spent an hour and a half there. Had lunch with them, met a few people. Their offices are pretty cool and like every startup-y type place, it's lots of open office plans and then people putting dividers between their desks so that they can try and get as not open office as possible. And then after that, I went to Adam Savage's cave, which was super fun, except Adam wasn't there because he had to leave early because he had family things and he had an SF Sketchfest show that evening and he had all sorts of stuff that he needed to do. So I didn't get to see Adam Savage, but I saw his assistant Jen gave me a little tour of the space and we talked about his tools and the stuff he uses to make all of his cool costumes and props. And then I saw a bunch of his costumes and props and some secrets that I couldn't take pictures of, which was awesome.
Oh man.
Yeah. I met people from the Tested crew. They were there. So yeah. And then I texted Adam and I said, "Thanks for letting me visit your cave. That was awesome." And he said, "I'm sorry I had to leave. I was excited to see you." And I was like, "Oh, that's cool."
Nice.
Nice. Yeah. Maybe I'll try again next time I'm in the San Francisco area.
And maybe you'll bring me with you.
Yeah. It was so funny. I mentioned it to a few friends and everyone's like, "Do you need someone to carry your backpack?"
Yeah.
Do you need someone? Like, leave me alone. Oh, Identity. It is nerd heaven. That place is awesome. I mean, so Adam's a really cool, nice guy. And it's wonderful that he's created this place for creativity and, adventuring in creativity. And he's championing making. And it's just everything about that is really cool. And the fact that he's made it to a place in his career where he's able to do that and to foster other people coming up into it, to create, it's his own thing now because of, what he's done. He's gotten to a place where he now has this and he brings in good people and he's building something wonderful. It was cool. Yeah. And then I hung out with some friends and that was it. And then it was time to go home. I wish I'd had more time. Next time. There's never enough time in the Bay Area. Never. No. And Blair, you left the Bay Area.
Yeah,
You nerded out. Did you?
I had a quick weekend in Disneyland. I was a very good friend of mine, her bachelorette party. She didn't want to do any of the stereotypical things. She just wanted to meet in Anaheim and spend a day in Disneyland. And we did just that.
That's great. So
It's very sweet.
was it more Mickey Mouse or more Star Wars?
Oh, definitely more Mickey Mouse. She wasn't a Star Wars person really, but we went to Star Wars Land briefly and we went to the cantina there. And I'm a pretty big Star Wars person and I may have teared up in the cantina just because it's very immersive.
Yeah.
It was just, it was really, really, really well done. And I just never expected feeling like I was inside the Star Wars universe. Also because it's not a particular land from a particular film. It's a brand new land. It's a new planet. So it's Star Wars franchise adjacent. It is within the theme of the lore, but it is not like you don't see like, oh, that's the booth where Han shot first. No, you just feel like you're in this
universe.
Mythology. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was so
That's
intense.
cool.
It was beautiful, and it was like I went up to one cast member and asked them where to buy something specific, and they were like, "Oh, you have to go off planet to get that. I think it's in Tomorrowland or something like that." You know, so they were just, "Oh, you have to go off planet." So it's just very like, it was very cool. That was my favorite part of the whole day for sure. But we mostly, rode Pirates and Haunted Mansion and Thunder Mountain Railroad, and the rest of the group rode Splash Mountain while I rode Winnie the Pooh because I don't like Splash Mountain. So,
oh my God.
There's just the one ride in Disneyland I refuse to ride.
So you rode Winnie the Pooh.
Yeah. The line's always 5 minutes. It was great.
Oh, you don't have to wait. You could have ridden it like 10 times.
Truth. Yeah. So anyway, that was lovely. Although I was also sick, and so I also don't really remember all of it. I was hyped up on cold pills.
Blech.
And then I flew home the next day, and it's been quite a week. I had like 6 hours of meetings yesterday. Tomorrow I'm teaching a 6-hour workshop on climate change communication in the Santa Clara County Parks. And then on Friday, I have a field trip of 100 kids coming to the zoo, and I'll be doing an amphitheater style program.
You're so talented and amazing.
I'm not rest. Like this weekend. Oh no. Oh, you think I should rest? Oh, okay. I'm going to Monterey for 3 days.
Yeah. Are you going to, what for? Is this for work or for?
No, it's 100% for fun.
Yay. Go to the aquarium.
Oh yeah. We're staying in a dog-friendly hotel.
Aw.
It's going to be fun.
That will be very fun.
Yeah.
Yay. All right, sleepyhead. Maybe you should go to bed and get some
Perhaps.
rest for your 6-hour workshop tomorrow.
Yeah, I have to leave so early to San Jose.
Yeah. Is it Noki or is it zoo? Or both together?
Well, I am teaching Noki on behalf of the zoo.
Got it.
So,
Cool.
yeah, and it's I forget what the name of the building is, but it's like in the wilderness. Like they had to send us written directions because our phones are going to stop working on the way there. Which that still exists in the Bay Area, just FYI. There's still places where your phone stops working.
Yeah. Hills. It's these things.
Yeah.
Hills and valleys.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, anyway. But I since I just bought my tickets for Seattle, I'm very excited for that. I think it's going to be awesome.
I think it's going to be very awesome. It'll be fun. Yay. That's coming up quickly. Oh my goodness. Okay. Okay, I'll get our housing figured out.
You have time.
I have time. I can do this.
You have lots of time.
Yes.
Nice.
All right.
Oh.
Did I freeze?
Well,
No. Okay.
let me know if you need anything from me
Okay.
in the next week, and otherwise I'll see you on Wednesday.
I think we're good. You go have rests and breaks and funs.
Yeah.
And I'll see you next Wednesday. And maybe Justin will have good internet connection.
He said he'd have good internet next week.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Okay. He'll have good internet next week. And then yeah, I'll see what I can. I don't have a guest yet for next week. We'll see if we have that or not. But yeah, I have to start actually changing. I have to sit down and do some changing of things to make it so that we can do the show the way that I'm talking about it. Yeah, so maybe not next week, that won't happen, but maybe in the next couple of weeks we'll start getting into that.
Sounds good.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe we should have like an extra meeting, a team meeting to hash out a few things.
Yeah, sounds
How
good.
it should go, maybe.
I'm with it.
Okay.
Sounds great.
Team meetings.
Mhm.
Go, team, go. Woo, woo, woo. Team TWIS. Yeah.
Yes. Rah, rah, rah.
Sis boom ba. Hey, say goodnight, Blair.
Good night, Blair. Say good night, Kiki.
Good night, Kiki. Good night, everyone.
Good night,
Thank you
everyone.
for joining us. Have a wonderful night. Yeah, jazz hands. Woo. I have a cough and I don't like it.
Uh-oh. You have SARS. I mean, coronavirus.
I don't.
No, you don't. You're fine. Everyone has
No,
the
I
flu right
don't.
now. It's just it's nothing.
It's leftover. This cough is a leftover from a cold I had weeks ago. Okay.
All right.
Good night. I got to hit the buttons.
Bye. Bye.
We'll see you next week. Thank you for watching. Happy sciencing, everyone. Good night.